Thank you. Please be seated. Item 1, announcements by the Mayor and the Chief Executive. Just want to say something about the slight changes to the arrangements. The microphones have been changed slightly further round so I can see you when you're talking and catch your eye if you don't hear me. Patience is needed because we don't have as much support as we normally have. And can I please just remind you that we've been asked to wear masks when walking around, and I'll try to remember it too. And also that item 12 will be brought forward to after item 7. I don't think we've got any announcements by the Chief Executive. No. Item 2 then, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have apologies from Councillor Kath Taylor, Martin Boat, Lisa Holmes and Mel Stephen. Thank you.
Councillor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apology from Councillor Fazila Lunet, Councillor Habiban Yaman, Councillor Yusra Hussain, Councillor Akhtar, Councillor Mumtaz Hussain, Councillor Nausheen Dad, Councillor Gwendo. Mr. Mayor, some members are stuck in the traffic on coming from Dewsbury Bartlett. They stuck on the near Murphy Lane traffic. Councillor Kathy Scott, Councillor Parvez, I think Councillor Eric Firth, and Councillor Pattison, Councillor Afakbat. They are joining us a bit late. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kath Pinnock sends her apologies. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Munro. Any other apologies from any of the other groups? I don't think there are. No. Minutes of the previous meeting then, item 3. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 17th of November 2021 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Councillor Sokol.
Mr. Mayor, I second the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Can we please vote by show of hands? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 4 then, declarations of interest. Members who have any disclosable pecuniary interests that would prevent them from discussing or voting on any item should disclose their interest now. Are there any interests to declare? No interests then? If you can I remind members, if you feel the need to declare any interest, to complete the form and submit to the clerk by the end of the meeting. Item 5, petitions from members of the Council. Are there any petitions to be submitted? Councillor Cooper.
This petition is entitled allow a rugby league museum in the George Hotel, Huddersfield. And it says, Kirklees Council has revoked a commitment to include a rugby league museum in the revamped George Hotel in the centre of Huddersfield. The George Hotel is the birthplace of rugby league and is a place of pilgrimage for rugby league fans from around the world. Including a rugby league museum in the hotel will be a huge attraction and make it a place of pilgrimage for rugby league fans. Huddersfield will be shown to value its link with this hugely popular sport and will play a key role in revitalising the town centre. Kirklees Council must reverse this decision and include a rugby league museum as part of the refurbishment. There are over 7,900 signatures on this petition.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Burke. Just chuck it over there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The petition I present is on behalf of myself and Councillor Smith, representing the people of Occupation Road and the surrounding roads in Linley, in objection to the proposal to make Occupation Road one-way, and this forms part of the overall proposals for the A629. What we're looking for is a more in-depth and considered consultation which would include all of the residents, local cycling groups, local walking groups, and to scale back on the proposals to make Occupation Road one way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Councillor Sue Richards. Lee Sue Richards.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present this petition on behalf of the residents of Holblower Lane who would like the speeding traffic investigated and proposals to reduce those speeds. There are over 30 residents who have signed this petition and presented it to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee Richards. I did write your name down and I still managed to get it wrong. Anyway, I'm sorry for that. I don't believe there are any more petitions from members of the council. No. So in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 9 in brackets 3, I direct that the subject matter of the petitions be referred to the appropriate service director for investigation. Item 6 then, deputations and petitions, this time from members of the public. We have a deputation. To receive deputations and petitions from members of the public, this evening we have one deputation. Can I invite Jez Walsh to please come forward and present his deputation? I believe Jez is from Platform 1, an organisation I've been to on a couple of occasions in my civic capacity. Jez, you've got 5 minutes to present your deputation to the council. Thank you.
This is myself and my colleague Bob Morse. We're here today to tell about the Platform 1 mental health services. People may know of us as a safe site, what we call the safe site. We have now up to 800 men using the safe site. We've opened up a crisis centre, a critical crisis centre, and we're here today to try to make everybody aware and to try basically to fund the service that we're offering, because we're expanding very, very quickly. I would like to point out that everybody in this room represents somebody that uses our service. We're working with people within the council. We've got people from the council coming down to talk to us today. We've got people from the council coming down tomorrow. We're not calling the people that work in the services. They work really, really hard. There are massive gaps in mental health services. Massive, massive gaps. We deal with everything from crisis right down to people with psychosis. We deal with suicides. We deal with both sides. We've saved people, and unfortunately we've had to deal with the aftermath of people that have taken their lives. It's becoming to a point now where it's becoming quite difficult for us. We're trying to increase the capacity that we've got. We've got 2 different sites. We're looking to start hubs. So we're talking about parity within the community for mental health and for physical health. What we're proposing to do is open up hubs all around Kirklees, North Kirklees, South Kirklees. We've opened up one hub in Normanbury, one in Meltham. We've had offers of other places to open up. We would like to open up in hubs in places such as the train station. Also, we're talking about having a place in the hospital. So what's happening in the hospital, we had to do a welfare call to somebody a couple of months ago, and the ambulance man told me they had to work for 4 hours on somebody in the back of the ambulance because they couldn't get him into A&E to work on. When he went into A&E, he was walking round and he saw this face and this face and he thought, I picked him up last night, I picked him up last week, and they're the same people that are phoning up because they've got nowhere to go. If we can have 2 rooms in the hospital, rather than going through it, costs £900 to put somebody through the circle in A&E. Rather than doing that, you can get, the rate team can come, they can assess the person and say, you need to come here. They can put them in with us. We have qualified staff. I'm a qualified psychologist. We've got qualified counsellors. We've got lots of people working with us. You could put them up with us. It'll save an absolute fortune. It'll save on the ambulance time. It'll save on the hospital's time. And also, we can bring them into our services the day after and start working them within our services. Now, I'd like to pass over to my colleague here, and he'll tell you a little bit more about the services.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. He's my warm-up artist. Right, basically just to tell you that if you think you know Platform 1, then you perhaps do, perhaps you don't. We're not the organisation we were 2 years ago. We have developed and emerged because of the crisis. We've altered beyond recognition. There's a pack waiting for you at the back. When you leave, there's a pack. It gives you some information. But just to tell you that we're not just a men's mental health charity, we're far more than that. It's now men, women, children, families, and the rest. Not even just mental health. It's a question of happiness, well-being, and the broader picture about the things that affect you guys and the things that affect the people that vote for you guys. And it's all about how we are as a community. And there's all sorts of headings in the pack that you've got there. How the work that we do impacts upon people that you know in all of the wards. So what I will say to you is, there is not enough time. If you can invite us back, we'd gladly go into loads more detail. But learn about us. Visit, please. Please visit. Railway station in Huddersfield, not hard to find.
Can I just have the last word, please? So just furthermore to the thing that happened with poor little baby Arthur, we're working within schools now doing crisis management between the schools and between the parents. We're working on a case now with a school and it looks like the child may be taken off the mother, and we're liaising between the social services, with schools and with the family themselves and supporting them. It's another line of work that we're going into, and I just think it's important that you know that Platform 1 is in every part of society. We're moving into every part and we're trying to make a difference. And I'm sure that you all go and do the things that you do because you wanted to make a difference in your community. And all we're asking today is, please, can you help us make a difference in the community as well? Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for listening to us.
Councillor Cahn to reply.
I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming today. I should take the mask off. I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming today and addressing this council and making us informed about Platform 1 and the work that you're doing. I have attended one of your AGMs prior to the pandemic, and I'm looking forward to receiving information from the Strategic Director and the Director of Public Health who are visiting tomorrow in terms of the gaps. Yes, you're right. Aside the pandemic crisis, we are having a massive increase in people presenting with mental health problems, and we are really keen to know what those gaps are and do our best to try and fill and facilitate community mental health support. So thank you, and thank you very much for all the volunteers that work for Platform 1.
Thank you, Councillor Cahn. Yes, they are a fantastic organisation, and I would encourage any councillors that have not been to see them to go along and have a look. So we move on to petitions under this item. Are there any petitions from members of the public? No, we haven't received any petitions. So now we move on to item 7, public question time. This is a total of 15 minutes. That should be sufficient, hopefully. Any questions that have been submitted in advance of the meeting which are not considered within the allocated time limit will receive a written response. First speaker, we have a question from David Heathcote. If you'd like to come up, David, and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, would the Cabinet provide a figure for the actual number of cyclists who have used Occupation Road as an active travel route pre and post-lockdown, and what the projected uptake in use is with the proposed plans?
Thank you. Councillor Mather to respond.
Thank you, David, for your question. The selection of Occupation Road is not based on existing cycle usage along the route, but has been identified as part of developing a wider network to provide a safe route that aims to encourage the uptake in cycling and a modal shift. We would not expect to see many cyclists using Occupation Road given its current form.
Sorry, would you like to give a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Cabinet's decision is to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds to force through a one-way system that we already know that 86% of residents in the area affected in around Occupation Road do not want. We already know that 86% do not want this. With no knowledge of who will use it, and which the taxpayer is forced to pay for. Is this considered a good decision? Active travel deserves better than this. I don't know if you're aware, but this is a requirement of local transport note 120. So if you want me to send you a link to that, I could do that so that you can have a look at what the government's requirements are. So the Cabinet is ignoring government guidelines, disregarding the residents. So I wonder, will you come back to the council next time with a historic and projected use of Occupation Road as an active travel route, and to say why this meets the government direct guideline?
Councillor Mather.
Mr. Heathcote, we don't take using any money lightly. It will undergo the due process, and if there are government requirements, the council will undertake those. We will be taking traffic surveys in each of the areas, which will include cycling routes and Occupation Road. And this is part of monitoring and evaluation process will follow the normal procedures for any major business case. We're not there yet. And this will help us to understand the long-term uptake of cycling in any area pre and post construction. So actually you're putting the cart before the horse. We're not there yet. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Heathcote. Next questioner, Keith Mallinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 months ago, I asked Council what was being done to address the road safety concerns of residents of the New Han Homes estate in Shawcross in Dewsbury. I was assured that things were in hand, but 2 months later, no work has been started. Can I ask the Council here today what specific action they have taken since I first brought up these concerns to get the roads and pavements completed?
Councillor Mather.
Thank you for coming back with this question, Mr. Mallinson. And I have great sympathy with the residents of the estate. So what has the council done? The council is actively working with Heron Homes to encourage them and their nominated contractors to complete all remedial works necessary to allow the road within Amberwood Chase development to be completed to a standard so that the council can adopt the highways. Engagement with Heron Homes has been problematic, but council officers are visiting the site regularly to assess progress and encourage early completion of essential remedials. We are pleased and encouraged that Heron Homes have employed a specialist contractor to oversee the necessary works. And the works appear to have begun on site on some of the issues in relation to outstanding statutory undertakings. Adoption of a highway built by a private developer is optional. The council cannot bring pressure to bear on any developer to choose not to complete the necessary legal agreements and put the required funds in place to facilitate public adoption. We are, however, continuing to engage with Heron Homes and will continue to do so until such time as these steps have been taken or Heron Homes confirm that they intend for the roads to remain in private ownership. The council remains hopeful that they will engage fully with us and enter into the necessary legal agreements which will allow the council to adopt the highway network once these remedial works are completed for the benefit of all the homeowners who have bought properties on that development.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, thank you. Well, given that the developer isn't completing the roads in a timely manner, is there a timescale that the council think it should be done? Because the residents that I've spoken to are very concerned, not necessarily with the roads, but more so with the pavements, which are very dangerous, and the safety aspect for them and their children also needs sorting out. So is there a timescale we can put on this to let the residents know that it's going to be completed?
But when you're working with a private contractor, and what we're trying to do is persuade them to undertake the work, and maybe I will have another discussion with the officers and see whether we can put in a time frame to get this work done, because we are on the work on this issue, but we cannot make them go any faster. But all I can do is promise you that we are doing the best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Mallinson. Next question, Greg Christophe.
Good evening again. I'm here again for Home for Scheme, and I'm here to protect my business, the Old Bridge Bakery, who's been going in for 27 years in my business. Last night we had a meeting, a business association meeting, where the members agree, all the members agree, they don't want to see my business going because of the scheme. Will the council consider to allow the flowerman for 20 minutes once a week, Friday, to park in a lot, so they can save one of the busiest businesses in Holmford?
Councillor McBride to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've discussed this matter, I think, at least 5 times, 3 times here in this council, and the question is the same again and again. There is a problem. I've addressed and given the answer to this. There's a problem of deciding between the 2 sides of the road. There is a need to make it possible for traffic to go through and effectively. It is going to negatively affect some parts of the road, one side or the other. On balance, this has been chosen and has been discussed massively throughout the area. I think there's never been any more consultation over any area anywhere in Kirklees than this. And the conclusion has been drawn, and I've summarised it last time. to say the same, that the decision has been made to go ahead with the scheme as proposed.
I will...
Supplementary.
Supplementary. So for 20 minutes, for somebody to deliver once a week, you will close one of the business, the most busiest business in Holmford, where we're employing 37 people. Will you come into my shop and tell my staff tomorrow they won't have a job?
That's an assertion which officers tell me isn't true, and that on balance it will have a not damaging effect on any business. It'll be negative, undoubtedly, but this is a balanced decision that's got to be made, re-businesses both sides of a road. And I can only reiterate the same point, you know, council after council. This is the third council in which we've discussed it. And I'll always give the same answer, because we've made a decision.
A decision, but
thank you.
it's unacceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Christophe. Question from Tenjinja Aziz. I hope I've got the name right.
Good afternoon, or good evening, Mr. Mayor. It was nice of you and your good wife, Judith, to come and visit us at Platform 1. My name is Tajinder Ajiz. I'm a Kirklees resident, here to ask a couple of questions and a couple of follow-up supplementaries. I have practiced in time. It should take about a minute for the first one, and then considerably less for subsequent. The two questions are to the Kirklees leader, Councillor Shabir Pandor, and he might actually like me for them, or 50% and 50% not. I don't think you know how positively I support you in your role, because I don't mention it often, and sometimes we agree to disagree. After all is said and done, we're not robots bent on world control. Since this is the first time I'm addressing the Kirklees full council meeting since 2018 and 19, and before the corona pandemic started, I'll make a few declarations of personal interest. I received help support from Platform 1 and would like to thank from the bottom of my heart for their dedication, voluntary work, support and advocacy, which allowed me the space, time and privilege to give back by using my own personal experience as examples of how I might help other people in need, to raise awareness, help make and build connections and professional relationships between Kirklees Council and Platform 1, who are working in the difficult and sensitive areas of mental health and crisis support for some of your Kirklees councillors' own constituents across the whole of Kirklees. Also, I attend and support a similar group organised and at least supported by Kirklees' own Community Plus community organisers at St Michael and St Helen's Church, and thank them for organising and hosting in the valuable work of building active local groups and communities, work that this council and councillors can be rightly proud of. However, today I want to make clear that
Can I just interrupt? Can you turn it into a question for Councillor Pandor, please?
Indeed, I'm asking these questions on my behalf, and here's the question. Without prejudice, without rancour, without seeking to blame any one person or individual or groups or organisations, I would like to ask the council leader, what are the lessons that Kirklees have drawn or should properly draw in their corporate governance, strategic thinking, how we as individuals, groups, organisations treat each other and those who we are supposed to serve, to learn from, incorporate, accept, adapt and change how we respect and treat other people as individuals, as leading organisation in Kirklees, the lives, contributions, successes and failures as exemplified by Marcus Rashford, the footballer, Azim Rafiq, the cricketer, former cricketer at the Yorkshire County Cricket Club, Prince Philip, the Queen's Consort, who died recently in his 90s, and Keir Starmer, Labour Party leader. And I'll stop there, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Pandor, you've got a lot to answer there.
They're all linked, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Tajinder, and good to see you again. You mentioned Platform One, and I appreciate that you have come here and shared your experiences regarding the vital lifeline they have provided you yourself and the two churches that you have mentioned to be able to say that they've done some fantastic work. And I share them congratulations with yourself. In terms of the lessons drawn, your question regarding the corporate strategy and the strategic thinking, the big question, but one thing I can say to Council and yourself is the last 20 months has been a roller coaster, unprecedented challenges. And one of the things that I know is mental health is a massive issue. A few months ago, I was at one of the panels to do with mental health arranged by the House of Lords and the House of Commons. And I was asked to share my experiences regarding what strategy and what policies and what strategic thinking we can put in. And I think the answer was what we saw in terms of community stepping up, the Voluntary Community Centre stepping up in a way that actually completely wowed the nation. But having said that, we can't let go of that because the Voluntary Community Centre, the way they stepped up, we have to make sure that we get a national strategy to ensure that that sector is funded properly. It's funded to make sure that we get some professionals that work with them. There needs to be a proper training and development plan. There needs to be a proper corporate plan that supports them. And then we need the resources to deliver that. Because there's no point in having a strategy and a policy at a national level and it's not resourced. So that's some thinking that's been done at a national level. But we will support the work around mental health everywhere we can. And I think the deputation that came here, Platform One, they do some marvellous work. I've been to see them. And I'm actually astonished that they actually haven't just talked with men's mental health. They mentioned women, children and families. And what I've done is I made a note in my phone to go and visit them again because they do provide a vital service. And I'm hoping that we can do a lot more work with them. Thank you for your question, Tajinder.
I'm afraid we've run out of time on this item now. We've had our 15 minutes. If you like, we can get, if you've got a second question, we can get a written response to that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so we'll get a written response to that.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your good work at Platform One. So our 15 minutes are up. I shall look to the council. We have one more person to ask a question. Is anybody interested in extending? Councillor Lawson. So you want the next question heard? Is that seconded? Councillor Smith? All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. So can I invite Jonathan Bray to ask a question? This is the last. We'll finish it after this one. We're just going to see if he's coming or not. Thank you, Jonathan.
Hi there. My name's Jonathan on behalf of the Home Access Scheme and businesses in Holmfirth. If businesses see a downturn in revenue of over 20%, will the businesses receive compensation for the disruption caused by the Holmfirth Road Access Scheme?
Councillor McBride.
I'm afraid the short answer is no.
Supplementary, would you like to ask a supplementary?
A new question.
Another question? Okay, second question then.
When is the Home First Access scheme likely to start and finish, and what timescales are we working on? Sorry, when is the Home First Access scheme likely to start and finish?
I don't know the exact dates. I can get those and ensure that you get the details. I'm not sure of the exact date. It'll be very soon.
And then obviously due to it starting very soon, and obviously...
Within your question, that there necessarily is going to be a downturn in usage and downturn in trade. I don't make such a presumption. I think you are presuming that. I think, if anything, the fact that the road is opened up and eased up should mean a benefit to trade both sides of the road.
But not short term, I agree.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for your question. Right, that's the end of that item, councillors. We now go to item 12, key discussion item. And I'd like to invite Tracy Brabin, the Mayor of West Yorkshire, to, I think she's going to give a 10-minute speech on this to start with, followed by questions from the council. And just so you know, I'll be asking the first question, which means I will be going down there. So after Tracy's finished, there will be a little bit of a short break while I walk down there. Okay, off you go, Tracy.
Well, thank you so much. What a privilege it is to be here. I must say, when I arrived, I got quite nervous because it reminded me of my GCSEs. You're all sat in rows. But thank you so much for the invitation and the warm welcome. And it's a delight to be here in what is my local authority. I liked it so much, I am buying a house in Slowett. So for all those councillors who are now my councillors, I'll see you afterwards. So thank you very much for the invitation. And can I, before I move on to my opening remarks, just thank you all personally for everything that you did and continue to do over the last 18 months, 2 years. We know this has been incredibly hard for us. We have been in these restrictions for longer than most communities. You were part of delivering those food parcels, delivering that tech to children that didn't have it, the testing, tracking and tracing, you were supporting that, the vaccination rollout, working with the NHS, you were working with your community to deliver that. You were helping people who were lonely with daily phone calls. I know the work you've done, and I just want to thank you from everybody here in our community. So, Kirklees, I believe you've got really strong leadership in Councillor Shabir Pandor and fantastic Chief Executive in Jackie Gedman. And if I could also just add Rachel Spencer-Henshaw, your Director of Public Health, to that list of thanks as well. She did steady the ship over the very difficult period when we were in and out of restrictions and when numbers were really rising exponentially, and got us through that difficult period with great wisdom. Now, we know that the pandemic has been incredibly hard for all of us, hasn't it? And the news of Omicron variant of great concern. We're going to hear, I don't know whether it's any minute now, or maybe you all know, you're all on Twitter, you know what the Prime Minister has been saying, whether we're going to Plan B or not. It's really worrying before Christmas with people having plans and wanting to see relatives after such a difficult period. So obviously you won't be surprised to know, please, if you have got an opportunity, do go and get your booster, because that is the way forward. Vaccination has helped us as a region, and that is the way out of this awful pandemic, because it's had a massive impact on the lives and livelihoods of families and communities. And building back a stronger and more inclusive and more resilient economy was at the heart of the promises I made to West Yorkshire 7 months ago. It could be 7 years. It feels like quite some time ago that I was in Leeds waiting for the result. It's something that I, and not just myself, but of course those other 5 West Yorkshire leaders, standing shoulder to shoulder to deliver on those promises. So it's been an absolute honour and a privilege to be the Mayor of West Yorkshire, the place where I was born and raised, and to be the first ever woman Metro Mayor in the country is also something I wear that lightly, hopefully, but it's something that I do reflect on, that it's for over 50% of our population, they now have someone who potentially will be someone that understands their life in a very lived experience way. So I'm really pleased to be able to do that. So we share ambitions for our region. And I was incredibly pleased and excited to go on a trip organised by the council to see the 10-year master plan for Huddersfield. And it's something I really do want to get behind. It's bold and it's impressive, especially during these testing times. So thank you all so much. You may have seen, and in fact some of you actually helped develop my 10 manifesto pledges I made to West Yorkshire. I'm not going to run through all of them this evening, but pleased to say that every single one of them has money attached and has moved the pledge on in some way. We're making progress on securing 1,000 well-paid skilled green jobs for young people, with businesses large and small making pledges and commitments to deliver, supported by the team in the Combined Authority. And I know that progress is being made on this in Kirklees, not least through the work green elements of housing pre-apprenticeships and on identifying local jobs in the manufacturing supply chain of offshore wind turbines, a really exciting sector. Tackling the climate emergency was also another one of my key pledges. We know it's a global crisis, but the solutions are local, and we know, don't we? The solutions must start in our regions, in cities, towns and rural areas. And I was really privileged to be at COP26 only a few weeks ago, talking to other mayors from around the world about the work we can do, acting locally to solve our challenges in our cities and towns. Our response to climate change needs to be something that's done by us and for us, rather than to us. At the West Yorkshire level, we're working towards being net zero carbon emissions by 2038. And I know that Kirklees Climate Commission has provided incredible insight and guidance to that. And the investment and action you're taking on air quality management and investment in electrical vehicle infrastructure will be vital to achieving that ambition. So I also want to be able to share the benefits of homes that are healthy, economical and warm, workplaces that are more efficient, an energy supply which is more local, clean, flexible and affordable, and transport that's sustainable, integrated and of course low emission. I also promised to you that I would prioritise skills and training, helping everyone across West Yorkshire, whatever their background, to be able to achieve their potential. If we're talking levelling up, skills must be part of that story. Only today, I recorded a video for our new Skills Connect scheme, offering free modular skills training for anyone in the region over 19. So please do share that with your constituents. The devolution of adult skills system education gives us the opportunity to do things differently, to design local programs that meet the needs of local people and local businesses. And I was really honoured to be able to go to the opening of the new Pioneer Higher Skills Centre in Dewsbury. Isn't that an amazing building? Congratulations to all of you for delivering that. It's a fantastic state-of-the-art facility, allowing thousands of people of all ages and backgrounds to get skills, to expand their knowledge, to open up new and exciting career opportunities. And I was delighted that the Combined Authority has been able to play a part in the regen of Dewsbury, and I hope to continue to do so. And I know the arcade particularly was a challenge, but it's something, the ambition is to be massively applauded. Finally, coming to a close, we also know that improving transport across our region is a real passion of mine as your mayor. I'm someone that uses the buses and the railway, and I know I am the voice of the passenger, and goodness me, we have a long way to go. And I can't tell you how disappointed and, quite frankly, angry I was by the decision to scrap the eastern leg of HS2. Obviously, there'll be differing views in this room, but paring back plans for Northern Powerhouse Rail from Manchester to Leeds with a stop in Bradford was also very, very disappointed. We want to unlock the full potential of north of England. Not only quicker travel times, but of course more jobs, more homes and capacity on our railway. Brand new investment and regeneration, better opportunities for our young people to get to those jobs, to get to those colleges. And I know, of course, that part of the IRP, it was really positive for Kirklees. The Transpennine upgrade is something that's been on the cards for more than a decade, and I am delighted, as I'm sure you are, that it's finally here. Obviously, we have the news of the mass transit system in West Yorkshire. That's also another highlight from the plan. However, not to get that new line across the Pennines, giving us the additional capacity, because of course this isn't just about timings, about how fast you can get city to city. It's about those stopping trains that give us that extra capacity. I also made a promise to you about buses. I love buses. We don't get enough of them, and they're too expensive, and they're not reliable enough. We need clean, green, reliable buses with tap-in, tap-out system, capped at an affordable rate. We're probably going to get to 550. I'm going to try and get that down to 450, capped in the future. We want to deliver a London-style transport system, don't we, that makes buses the first choice, not just because you don't have a car. And it would be remiss of me, after 3 decades in the creative industries, not to just mention my creative New Deal. And just to make sure that people don't have to travel elsewhere to experience world-class theatre, music and arts, which is why I am so excited about Kirklees Year of Music. I will never be home. I will always be out in Kirklees listening to great stuff going on. Culture is what makes people want to live in a town or a city. It's what makes a place livable, vibrant, and a great place to raise a family, enabling us to attract and retain talent within the region, because it's about skills, it's about training, it's about opportunities, regeneration and well-being, and about our pride in our community. A strong economy might attract people to jobs in the region, but it's the culture, the sense of place and belonging that will make people feel comfortable calling it their home. As only one of the 2 mayors in the country responsible for police and crime, I'm taking a public health approach to tackling crime. And the safety of women and girls is a priority across my pledges, but plays a crucial role in the police and crime plan I've been developing. And it's been worked on as we speak, and I'm delighted that we've been able to engage with more people than ever before across West Yorkshire. We've secured £3.5 million to support victims across West Yorkshire, victims of domestic violence, including programmes to support women and girls' safety. We're doing work to make sure that we have independent domestic violence advisors. We're rolling out an education programme in schools. We've got a peer support network and training for universities, for men at universities around consent, and support for women who want to use parks. We've got 10 parks that we are running as a pilot to make them safer for women and girls. So I'm very pleased that our West Yorkshire Police had a good Peel report, but of course we're not complacent. We can go further. That's why I'm working alongside the police to increase the number of police officers and staff. It's not easy, but we will make progress, and they must reflect the communities that they serve. So 7 months in, that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of where we are. I'm really looking forward to your questions. It's so great to see so many friends in this room, and how many hours we've all spent door knocking in the rain. I'm looking forward to working with you more closely, and really excited to hear your questions. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much. So if councillors can put their hands up, the officers at the back will type them down. As I said, now we've described this to the leaders. It's quite complicated because it's got to be proportional. After I've asked my question and returned back, I will then go to, let's see, Councillor Simpson probably. So I'll just have some patience, and I'll go down there and ask my question, take my chain off, and I'll see you in a minute.
I need a chain. I'm obviously missing out. This is not right. Is there a spare? Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Sorry?
Thank you, Chair. Right. Thank you, Tracy. On Saturday, most of our MPs, together with the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, celebrated and supported Small Business Saturday, recognising that small businesses are at the foundation of economic recovery in our towns. It was all over social media. Some small businesses in Home Firth are currently worried sick about the pending Home Firth Town Centre Access Plan, funded by government money and administered by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The removal of loading from the south side of Victoria Street threatens to put 6 shops out of business. There is no justification for the removal of the loading. Can I ask you please if you will look at this for me, and please if you can, please reverse the decision to remove the loading before it's too late, before these shops close and people lose their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's not something I'm across. I was in Home Firth actually at the weekend at the Picturedrome watching during breaks, if anybody else was there. It is a brilliant town centre, and as somebody that was a Member of Parliament for Batley and Spen, a collection of towns, I understand the value of towns for our identity, our community. You only have to look at Hebden Bridge and other communities that have really weathered the COVID storm and had increased footfall in town centres. So I don't know about that particular issue. It sounds like it's a council issue rather than a West Yorkshire Combined Authority issue, but I'm happy to take that away, and my colleague Mike will pick up any questions that need further investigation. But thank you for raising. It sounds like that's an issue that's been repeated this evening, so it seems like it's a live issue.
Every time I go out that door, there is a temptation to keep going and not come back.
Don't do it.
But anyway, there we are. Who's next? Councillor Simpson, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to our hopefully temporary chamber, Tracy. It's lovely to have you with us. Our draft net zero roadmap, which has been led by leading UK climate academics, has shown that one of the key and most cost-effective steps that we need to take is retrofitting existing properties. This will not only reduce carbon emissions, but it will reduce bills for our residents and help to tackle fuel poverty. I know that you're aware of this because you very kindly joined myself and Councillor Scott, one of our Kirklees Council retrofit schemes, where our team are doing fantastic work. But as things stand, there's not anywhere near the amount of funding available that's needed to scale this up at the speed that we need. Without change, meeting our ambitions are going to become incredibly difficult. So will you work with us to not only expand on this important work that we're already doing, but to lobby government for the funding that we, West Yorkshire, and all of our local authority needs to scale up retrofitting programmes which will deliver green jobs, carbon reductions and reduce fuel bills?
Thank you so much for that question, Councillor Simpson, and I'm absolutely chimed with your ambitions. I know that here in Kirklees, you're at the forefront, actually, of calling out the climate emergency. It's not something we can do alone. We can come together, combine our talents and our knowledge of what needs to be done. But I have been saying on any forum I can that the powers of the Mayor, the Metro Mayor across the region, should be extended to further decision-making powers around climate emergency powers, where we can say where our homes that need retrofitting are, that we can turbocharge that work. I was really, really impressed with what Kirklees were doing, because it wasn't just wrapping a warm blanket around the house. It was a complete engineering, technological feat with solar panels, with new boilers, with wall insulation. It was an extraordinarily ambitious project, and I know that it was eye-wateringly expensive, is my understanding, but actually it was also a learning process, so that once we know what works and how to do it, we can then train people swiftly, make sure that we can roll this out more widely across West Yorkshire. I went to another project in Holbeck where our traditional Yorkshire back-to-backs, whilst you can't do the same sort of work you were doing in Kirklees in social housing, these were homes that were wrapped in what was like a warm blanket. And speaking to a mum there, she was saying, not only have my energy bills dropped substantially, my kids can use their bedrooms to do their homework. And after all being clustered in the warm, in the kitchen around the kitchen table, it's so much better for family life that they are able to go to their bedrooms to study in the quiet. So we know the impact that this work has. It's a combination of building new passive house, new green projects and homes, as well as retrofitting the stock that we already have. And I'm in my climate and environment plan, I lay out in quite some detail about what we could do with the money that we have at the moment, but also what we could do with 85 million that we've identified that we need as a combined authority to tackle the climate emergency. I'm very pleased as well that we've got, for the first time ever, the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission, because that is bringing together all the talents around this subject. But I do think cities were part of the problem of climate, our climate emergency, but they're also going to be part of the solution as well. So I know that levelling up and climate change are both sides of the same coin. You cannot level up if every 2 years you have a business in Hebden Bridge or wherever that's going to be washed away. And what used to be a once-in-a-lifetime catastrophe is now every 2 years. You can't level up without hard flood defences, without Slow the Flow in Calderdale and other organisations like that doing amazing work to try and keep our communities safe. So it's urgent, and I will be behind you and the work you're doing in Kirklees all the way. Thank you, Councillor.
Tracy.
Councillor Marchington.
I think this is more scary than question time. I don't know.
I'll smile and then ask my difficult one. Thank you, Tracy, for your presentation. You touched on the your pledge for 1,000 skilled, well-paid green jobs for young people. And what I'm really interested in, you touched on a couple of projects in Kirklees, and what I'm really interested in, what you believe the scale of the impact of that pledge will be on employment for young people in Kirklees.
Thank you. Well, you'll know that these pledges are the floor, they're not the ceiling. So my ambitions are go further than 1,000. They're going to be tough to hit that target in the first instance because, of course, these are skilled, well-paid jobs for young people, hopefully in the green sector. But we have a number of companies like Northern Power Grid. They were one of the first that came on board, wanting to work with the Mayor's office to identify opportunities for young people. So we will be matchmaking companies and young people, but also enabling companies to go further to create those jobs. But also it's part of a whole picture, a bigger picture, that we need young people to have the skills in order to be ready for those well-paid jobs, which is why I'm really pleased about Skills Connect, because not everyone can afford to go to college for 3 years or even a year. They have to work, they have to pay their bills. These are modular, they're agile, they're in response to businesses and their needs. So we're currently around 250 jobs. Around that number. I'll have to clarify that, but that's where we're at so far, jobs that have been pledged specifically because they're skilled for young people. We did start out thinking that the Kickstart programme would be helpful. I'm glad we didn't go down that route because, as you know, that's been proved quite cumbersome and hasn't delivered on the jobs that were promised. So we're doing it through the Mayor's Gateway. So we will be bringing those companies together, making sure that they pay proper wages for young people to get more power, more money into our communities through young people having the opportunities and not having to leave home to get a good job. Thank you, Councillor.
Tracy.
Do you want a supplementary?
Yeah, just to follow that up. Yeah, thank you for your response. I mean, the concern from a Kirklees perspective is that if those 1,000 jobs are shared evenly across West Yorkshire, then we're talking about 200, skilled, well-paid jobs for young people in an area. If you're looking at the ward, my ward, which has got about 2,500 to 3,000 young people of working age, depending on your line, it's about 8 jobs. In the past, some of the projects don't quite reach out, the diversity of Kirklees, out to the valleys and the towns, which there's 423,000 people live here. So what we're looking for is, we know we've got businesses and companies, a variety of levels in Kirklees where young people could do those jobs. So that's some of the detail we're interested in. And the other thing is about the ladder of opportunity. So we've got, that whole opportunity for young people. Not every young person is going to end up in, working for Cummings or Syngenta or some of those. They're going to be working for, in office apprenticeships. So it's some of that detail we're looking for to make sure there's something for all of the children and young people of working age in Kirklees.
And certainly there are 2.3 million people in West Yorkshire. 1,000 jobs for young people is, of course, a drop in the ocean. And hopefully it is going to be part of my wider offer, but very happy to share more details with you specifically about Kirklees and which companies have come on board as partners. This is obviously a moving project, but very happy to work with you to see what more we can do.
Councillor Cooper.
So, West Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority has provided funding to Kirklees Council for the refurbishment of the George Hotel through your Getting Building Fund. On the Wicker website, when I read it this morning, it said, remedial works will be completed to a Grade 2 listed building, the George Hotel in Huddersfield Town Centre. Following the refurbishment, the building will be the new home of the National Rugby League Museum with complimentary hotel accommodation. Do you feel disappointed that you have provided the council funding for something that it is now not providing?
And certainly our legacy as a rugby union community is second to none. And I am really proud that rugby league, apologies. Gosh, how could I make that rookie error? And it's second to none. And certainly Batley Bulldogs and other rugby league teams really kept us going, didn't they, during the pandemic? They really were the beating heart of our communities. And for them to have a museum is really important. It's also great that that building is going to be renovated. It's part of the gateway coming out of the station, and I know it's part of the station to stadium plan that's very ambitious and green and is on paper is looking fantastic. Where the museum actually goes, I think is a matter for the council, is my understanding. I think, from my understanding, the plan is for it to go as part of the regeneration, the £10 million regeneration, to go in the centre of that region into what was the library, is my understanding. But I'm very pleased that that is finally happening, because I know it's been a campaign that for many years you have all been leading on to renovate the George Hotel, to stop it being the eyesore that it is. But I'm very happy to go into more detail with you, Councillor Cooper. Obviously, this is an issue for the executive, for the leader and planning, etc. And I am just very happy to be able to have been part of the Getting Building Fund for across the region. Actually, we've got some amazing projects that will be very attractive, bringing in tourism and greater footfall into our town centres.
Supplementary.
Supplementary. Thank you. I don't think any of us really here, well, most of us didn't know it was going in the library before you mentioned it this evening. So we've learnt something tonight, perhaps. But I think many of us wish it would remain in the George Hotel. So my question is, will you convene a meeting with myself as one of the ward councillors representing Huddersfield Town Centre, with Rugby League Cares and relevant council officers and cabinet members to seek a resolution to this matter that retains a Rugby League museum in the George Hotel?
No, Councillor Cooper, I can't guarantee that that will be the outcome because that is not specifically my remit regarding planning and your community. Devolution means that you make the decisions about your community without necessarily those people from outside of Huddersfield making that decision. But can I just say, Rugby League Cares is a fantastic organisation, and the work they've done around men's mental health is second to none. If it serves the council for me to be at that meeting, I'm very happy to do so, but just be aware, Councillor Cooper, my powers may be limited and I want to manage expectations.
Funding for something that's now not been delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Some of you are looking a little bit mystified about the order in which I'm taking this, so I'm assuming that your group leaders or group business people who attended the Mayor's Beefead haven't told you, or you didn't understand. But what's happening is you've got a list up there. I'm not taking it in that, I'm sort of roughly taking it in that list order, but by political group, because I'm trying to match the proportionality that's put in front of me. So the next speaker will be Councillor Warner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and lovely to meet. You know, it's still Mr. Mayor, is it? Shouldn't be. Mrs. Mayor, Madam Mayor, whatever. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I was delighted when you were elected was because your passion seemed to tie up with things that are dear to mine and many people in this room's heart, which is climate emergency and the need for sustainable transport. Trouble is, there's really good intention and there are some good policies attempted, a lot of which at the moment is still at the talking shop, aims, plans, and isn't actually affecting the biggest problem we have, which is the motor car. Now, you may be aware that there's a bit of a thorny issue around at the moment, which has resulted in many thousand people signing a petition. That is that one of the most attractive, beautiful approaches to Huddersfield from Halifax is lined with beautiful old mature trees. And there is a plan going through because money came from Wicker, from West Yorkshire, for a specific purpose, which is to widen a junction at a road where there are hold-ups, and in order to do that, these trees have to go. Now, as a look for the council, and dare I say the country, for a council that is committed to climate change, being seen to chop down mature trees with all the publicity it's going to get, and the people tying themselves to trees, it's going to make a mockery of what is, I do believe, good intent. So my question is, very quickly, is there any way that through your role, you are able to think about lobbying on a national level for money that's earmarked for road transport? As long as we keep thinking just about the car, we are never, ever going to solve climate emergency. If that money, and it's many millions, could be reallocated without going through all the hoops or losing the money that the council's been allocated and going back to the bottom of the queue, if that money could be allocated for sustainable transport, 11, 12 million to subsidise our buses, our trains, to get more bike lanes, that would put Kirklees on the map. And I think it's about time we look beyond the narrow vision that all funding streams work to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Warner. You share a lot of my ambitions as well for our region. If I could say that when you say that we haven't gone things are just in the talking phase, can I reassure you, every single one of my manifesto pledges has money attached to it and has gone further. And this will be part of the process. Obviously, I'm 7 months in, but if you have an interest, everything is on the Combined Authority website, where you can see those decision points where money has been allocated and we're stepping forward. Also, I hope that every single one of you took up the opportunity to go on Free Bus Sunday, trying to get more people out of their cars and onto buses, because I share, Councillor Warner, your desire to get people out of their cars. When every day there's 100,000 cars on the M1, we have a job to do. When 70% of the journeys into city centres are by car, we have a job to do. Now, I know that road building people have different opinions about it, but road building is part of my mission to get bus prioritisation. In the bus service improvement plan, we have a commitment to bus lanes, cycle lanes. We've spent tens of millions actually already on cycle lanes. We're looking at a electric cycle hire scheme. As somebody that cycles, I love it, but I just can't do it in Kirklees. The hills are just too great. You have to be an Olympian to be able to do it, or have an electric bike, which are quite expensive. So active travel is something that's really important to me. Now, about your substantive point, this is around planning, and I would be very bold to come into your chamber to tell you what you need to do around your planning decision making. So I'm afraid you will have to take that up with your leaders and your planning team, because that is, my understanding, is in the planning process. Thank you.
I do appreciate that, but can I just mention that we all know there's not much trust in politicians, councils, etc. in the country at the moment. And you know, I just don't think it's a good look for a council anywhere to have all these bold moves for a climate emergency. Ordinary people are going to see these trees coming down. It's going to be appalling publicity, and that's what I'm aware of.
Councillor Warner, can I just congratulate you and so many in this room for lobbying so hard for the White Rose Forest. And the leadership that you've shown in the tree planting across the region. My sister, she's a carer, and she in her spare time plants trees in Kirklees. And thanks to all those volunteers and so many others, I think the ambition for our region to plant is to be applauded.
Thank you, Councillor Warner. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, and welcome to Huddersfield. Thank you for coming out to speak to us, and thank you for your presentation. I hope it's the first of many to come. I guess, well, should say welcome to the neighbourhood. You're moving into Slathway, which is part of the Combe Valley ward. My ward, Home Valley North, neighbours that, so I cover Honley, Miltham, Brockholes. And my question, in part, relates to that. Much of the capital programme of the Combined Authority focuses upon the urban areas and linking up the cities. So my question is, what's the focus of work in the rural areas, such as the Kirklees Valleys, Combe Valley, Home Valley and the Dearne Valley? So if you could give us a bit of an outline, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to remind you, you all know anyway, that the process is that councils develop their plans and they come then to the Combined Authority for support, and we work together to deliver those plans. I really get what you're saying about the sense that cities and larger towns, potentially like Huddersfield, like Wakefield, like Leeds and Bradford, might potentially be drawing a lot of the funding. I would just try and emphasise the difference between, obviously as Kirklees, you have your responsibility to your constituents. My role as the Mayor of West Yorkshire is to have that strategic look, that strategic overview. So that's things like climate emergency funding that is about priority bus lanes, about buses and trains across the whole region. It is about your councils, and you as a councillor, you're a fantastic advocate for your community. If you have those suggestions and those plans, you should bring them to the council, and they will, come to us for those capital plans. A lot of the funding is revenue funding, so some is capital, some is revenue, and it's identifying those funding streams. If I may just say one gripe from us as a combined authority, and it's directed from government, is that you might have an amazing plan. We enter a beauty contest with government, in competition with others. We have used a lot of capacity and resources to develop that plan with you, and then it may not get chosen, and the community fund is one example. And I am pressing government to say, the way to level up is to give us the funds we need in order to deliver for our communities, so we can work out what we need and share it out. It's actually more cost effective, it delivers better outcomes for our community, and it stops us wasting resources in preparing plans. But if you have something specific that you'd like to raise, it looks like you have, with me or with Councillor Pandor, then the floor is obviously yours.
Thank you.
A supplementary?
Yes, please. You guessed right. There's two projects that we're looking to develop out in our ward and through our ward. One's the Meltham Greenway project, which fits in nicely with our active travel agenda, and it's designed to run that from Meltham Mills on into Huddersfield. But it's something that we're trying to get Sustrans interested in, but it's also a case perhaps of having a broader support. There's a focus on the Greenway, the new Greenway proposal for Wakefield Road that's getting substantial funding. Our Greenway project is much more affordable and perhaps more wanted. The second scheme relates to a very small area of land right in the centre of Meltham, and it's called the bus turnaround area. It's controlled by the combined authority, and it serves very little purpose as it stands. And we're very much keen to see that site repurposed. So we'd like to see it as a location where we could have secure bike storage, where we could have charging points, where we could have more extensive disabled parking or larger vehicle parking, and where we could use it as an event space at the same time as having no meaningful impact upon the bus services that run through Meltham. None of the pay-for-bus services are particularly keen to use it. So we have a very much underused space, but we have this difficulty, if you like, that it's a combined authority asset, but in terms of the big picture of the work of the combined authority, it's a very tiny piece of that. And it may be that it doesn't get the notice that we'd like it to have, but I'll happy to pick that up later. But I'd like to know whether those are the kind of more modest schemes that the combined authority would be keen to support along the way.
Nothing in that scheme that I disagree with. It absolutely chimes with my ambitions for the region about active travel, about community, about the greenways, getting people out and about on bikes. And Sustran is a great partner. Obviously, it's about developing the business case, taking it to council and then bringing it to us. But there's nothing in there that I would say doesn't chime with our ambitions. And I know that transport hubs, we are working to try and make sure that those transport hubs where you get an intersection between being able to hire a bike, being able to go on a cycle route and so on, that they are in smaller communities rather than in big town centres. So it is something that sounds very interesting, and I'm sure Councillor Pandor will have picked that up as well.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Lukic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Tracy, for coming to take our questions. My question is about the West Yorkshire Police and Crime Plan. Could you say whether you'll ensure that the West Yorkshire Police and Crime Plan, as part of addressing your priority pledge to tackle violence against women and girls, Will you ensure the plan includes a comprehensive strategy to address grooming gangs, which unfortunately we've had a series of local cases in recent years?
Thank you for your question. We are currently developing the police and crime plan. There are sections that are going to the police and crime panel that you'll know. It is not for me to develop plans around grooming per se. What is important for me is to make sure that we end vulnerability of whoever, whether that's young girls, young boys, people who are vulnerable in the community, where those people prey on their vulnerability. I'm working with the West Yorkshire Police and partners, and you'll be pleased to know that the work that we're doing is taking a public health approach where we're working with the NHS, we're working with education, we're working with the third sector, we're working with those people who do outreach work to make sure that vulnerability is protected. Those young people that could be vulnerable are absolutely given every opportunity. It is unacceptable what we have seen over the last few years, but I would also say the fact that 19 women a day are raped in West Yorkshire and 11 women a day are sexually assaulted. And, you know, we cannot stand back and obviously do nothing about it. We're not going to do that. But those numbers are higher than the national average. We have a job of work to do to make West Yorkshire the safest place to live and work and raise a family. And that will be my priority. And certainly that's what I'm hearing from the community, from the people we've spoken to. And we have spoken to older people, business people, young people, people in care, sex workers, people in the community. We have had the most extensive interaction as part of a Tell Tracy programme over the last few months, led by, you may know, Alison Lowe is my deputy mayor, and as two women with lived experience of sexual violence, we are using our experience to support the work that the Office of the Police and Crime team are doing, and also West Yorkshire Police. We won't stand by, we will not be bystanders, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that those who commit these heinous crimes serve their time, of course. And we will make sure that we do everything we can to make sure women and girls, as well as boys and men, are safe. Because let's not forget, violence against women and girls is majoritatively done by men, but also violence against men and boys is also done by men as well. So we've a job of work to do to stop violence in our society. And we're on it. We're rolling up our sleeves and we're going to get to it.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Sorry if I got the wrong end of the stick. The impression I got from your answer was that there's not much that yourself or your deputy, when exercising your functions as Police and Crime Commissioner, there's not much you can do about the specific issue of grooming gangs. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, just to clarify with everyone in the room, I am not the police. I am the voice of the public, holding the Chief Constable to account. And as I say, the Peel report was outstanding. But let me tell you here now, if we found any incidences where people were turning a blind eye, where people were brushing things under the carpet, we would be on them straight away. We will not accept that in our society, in our community. We deserve better. And we will lead with the highest expectations and the best examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lukic. Just to update Council, that's the first pass-through of everyone. So the Greens and the Independents have had their allocation. So we're back to the start now. So it's Councillor Taylor next.
Welcome, Tracy. And can I take this opportunity to congratulate you on your election? You mentioned earlier about out knocking on doors in the rain. I was there too, but I'm not sure I was knocking for the same outcome. If I could ask you though, you've talked a lot about buses. and that's what I'd like to come back to. I represent one of the rural wards in the south of the district in Kirkburton. Buses are rarer than hen's teeth. So when we talk about buses and having free bus Sunday, it's fine, but I don't think there are the buses at the moment that the communities need. And I just wonder if you'd just perhaps spend a minute and just explain what you think you can do in your role to support those rural communities like mine where you don't get many buses. And just to give you an example, if I leave my village to come into Huddersfield by car, it'll take me about 15 minutes. If I got on the bus from my village, it would take over an hour, because of the elongated routes they go through all of the villages in my patch. So if you just maybe comment on that a little.
Thank you for that. So let's just to put it in context. The bus system is in crisis because of COVID. We have, as the Combined Authority, we have supported the bus service to the tune of tens of millions of pounds, almost the same as government, in order to deliver a consistent service for key workers to get to work during the pandemic. We have struggled to get numbers back to pre-pandemic heights. We need that bus service to do well, and we will support it. But for example, because it wasn't economically viable, in Leeds a bus service was dropped by First. I was lobbied by a really big group of people who would have been isolated because they lost that connectivity. We were able to, through extending the route slightly, claw back a little bit of funding, and basically we've paid for it ourselves because we know how vital that is. Now, it seems wrong to me that there are companies across West Yorkshire that are providing what is a public service, let's not forget, but are making profit out of it and making judgments on whether this service and this route is profitable or not. Now, the bus service improvement plan, hopefully, when we go into this enhanced partnership, which is working more closely with the companies that deliver this service, we can start to say where we think some of these routes should go. Now, there will be routes, and I'm not going to promise a bus at the end of everybody's driveway. There will be routes that are absolutely not economical because it's one farm and then a mile and then another farm. There is a really good scheme that's happening in Leeds at the moment, which is an app-responsive bus. So once this is trialled, and we see it had a quiet launch a couple of months ago. Once this is trialled, we'll see how it works. But we have to be agile, we have to be creative in solving this problem, that getting a bus to everyone is going to be tricky, but we must find the solution to it. We also need the clarity on bus routes. So it isn't just about going into cities, it's about exactly what you were saying about connectivity. Now from Slough to Home Firth, 45 minutes, an hour on a bus is 15 minutes in the car. Of course people will jump in a car over waiting for a bus and that connectivity. So I think it's a really important point you make. I really like Kirkburton, it's a great place to live. It's very beautiful, but it doesn't have that connectivity. And certainly, if we do get to a point where it's franchising, we've put £1 million aside to develop that programme to see what we need to do if we are going to make that decision. We will be absolutely looking at where those cold spots are. But if money that could be used for more rural bus offer is being used to just be shored up as profits, then that's not the system that's going to work for us. It also doesn't help that we have a mixed picture of providers. It's really important that we get that connectivity between providers. So if you buy a ticket on First, you can use it on Arriva. If you buy a Transdev, you can use it on Arriva and First, because it's just so unfair that people who use buses for many stops, so for example, somebody with caring responsibilities, they go to work, they do someone's shopping, they go home, they go to see their mum, then they take the kids to swimming, that's going to cost them more than somebody that just goes in and out to the city if it's not capped. And that's why the cap is so important. So this is part of a bigger picture. And I'm grateful you've raised it, because that rural connectivity is going to be one of our biggest challenges. But there are ways around it, and we've seen good practice in Nottingham and elsewhere that, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you can steal somebody else's good idea. Certainly I'll be working with communities to identify where those routes are needed.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, I wonder, we do have some ideas about how we can tackle this. Part of the problem is the buses go end to end, large buses, which are full when they leave Huddersfield, empty by the time they get to the end of the rural areas and the edges of Kirklees. And we have tried to suggest an interchange at some point where you have smaller buses that are bringing people from the rural areas into a point where they can then move into buses that go through to central Huddersfield. I wonder if she would be willing to come out to Kirkburton, come and meet me. Let's go and have a look around, and I can talk to you about these proposals. I know it's not going to be next week, but if she would commit to coming out to Kirkburton and having a look. And then just quickly, will she also, you talked about the levelling up funds, will you also be backing the bid for funding for the Penistone line?
Penistone line, absolutely, and certainly the Calder Valley line. There was so much that was missed from government that didn't seem incredibly expensive, that could make such a difference. But just talking about the interchange, it's really important that if you have an interchange that you have that connectivity, that you don't end up at the interchange and then you're waiting. You've got to have that joined up system, and that's where it slightly breaks down, because I'm travelling to Gummersall, a couple of months ago, waiting in Birstall for nearly an hour for a bus up the hill. You decide to walk, or I'm lucky I can afford an Uber. Loads of people can't, so they have to walk up the hill. It's not great if you've got disability issues or you've got a buggy or shopping. We've got to make sure that it's joined up, and at the moment it isn't joined up. And I think that's the work that the Enhanced Partnership is going to look into, but also whether we then get to the point where we take buses back into public control. That will be part of our plan. To your question about a trip to Kirkburton, how could I say no?
Thank you. Councillor Uppal.
Please don't everybody invite me to go to their wards. I'll never be in the office.
And thanks for being here today. I also wanted to ask about buses as well, so sorry we've been a bit repetitive here. You've probably answered some of this already, but I'm also a regular bus user, and we know at the moment that they're not responsive to the customers, our residents. The prices don't always make sense, and as you say, because of the different bus companies that we've got, you can't use your ticket most of the time on different services. So I just wanted to ask what conversations or lobbying that you're doing with government about trying to bring in a more publicly owned service. That's where I think we should be going in the end. But also, if we are going to do that, we know that we need the required infrastructure capital funding, but also the revenue funding for fares to be able to bring fares down so they're reasonable for our residents. And I don't know if you could say a little bit about what you're doing on that.
What our bus improvement plan is unfortunately attached to the timetable of government. So we have to go to the Enhanced Partnership. We're waiting to see how much we're going to get. We've put in an incredibly ambitious bid. I don't think we're going to get all that money, unfortunately. The Enhanced Partnership then has to go through a process, and we will get to a point where our decision point about public control will be in the next couple of years. We want to move as fast as possible. My role as your mayor actually is pinned on buses. I have staked my reputation on getting buses better, because I know that is going to make the biggest difference to levelling up, to opportunities for young people, to making sure we are connected and really punching above our weight across West Yorkshire. We need that bus system to work. Lobbying government is tricky at the moment. I'm reaching out to ministers, I write letters, nobody replies. I'm not on my own, I'm part of the M10, group of mayors. We've invited the Prime Minister to come and speak to us about levelling up, and still we don't have a visit in the diary. It is challenging at the moment. There's so much going on. Trying to engage the attention of ministers has been tough, but honestly, rest assured, I will be doing everything in my power, and that is partly not just working with the bus companies, but creating the infrastructure that's going to really help. So those bus priority lanes, we have got to improve reliability. It can't be right that when I'm stood waiting for the bus and there's the 55 to Cottingley from Leeds, one of the areas of deprivation, and the bus drops off the schedule, and the guy next to me with a little kid and it's pouring down, he has got to stand there for another hour to wait for the next one. And who knows what's happening at home. Maybe he's going to be late for the drop-off, or he's late for work, or whatever. All of that stress because the bus network doesn't work. It works in Europe. I know we can do better. It works in other places in the country. In London, Nottingham is pretty decent. The Midlands is getting better. We need to tackle this head on. It is fundamental to our success.
Would you like a supplementary?
Yeah. Thank you, and I'll be quick, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, one of the key things is going to be about connecting public transport with active travel. I'm just wondering what plans you've got to co-produce that work with residents, and particularly bus users who will know, public transport and active travel users who will know best about connecting those routes together.
You're absolute partner in this. We can't do this without you. Of course, we need to know what your challenges are, where you want bus routes. I mean, cycling is also going to be really important where it's flat. We need to make sure we have that connectivity from when you get out of the station, you can go by bike to your place of work or back home. It's also about making active travel for people who are walking or with mobility issues compelling and attractive. We have to get people out of their cars. 44% of our emissions are from transport. We've bid for the Zebra bid for electric buses. Even if we get all the buses we want, remember it's another beauty contest, that will only get us from 1% of our bus stock that's electric to 10%. Well, that's not good enough, is it? We've got to go further and faster, but we do need government to come with us on that journey. So I will be making the case endlessly over the next few years to government and to anyone that will help us to get a better bus service.
Thank you, Councillor Upall. Well, I have to inform you that that's 60 minutes on the dot.
No, that's not over, is it?
And we worked out that we estimated that we would get 20 questions, and that's what we based our proportionality on. In the end, we only got 9 questions because I think the answers were very long. But I have to say, I think you've done a damn good job standing there for an hour taking lots of questions. And
can I just say, sorry, Mayor. Can I just say, I think if you'd have had yes or no answers from me, you'd be very disappointed. So I will take this away, and hopefully next time when I come, I shall be pithier. And I know that we must get to 20 questions. Thank you so much for the invitation, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Before we move on, I'm going to have a 10-minute break now. Thank you. Please be seated. Page 11, item 8, making the Home Valley Neighbourhood Development Plan and consequential updates to the Kirklees Development Plan Policies Map. Councillor McBride.
Mr Mayor, the Home Valley Neighbourhood Development Plan is approved and confirmed by referendum. Can I congratulate the Parish Council and in particular the working group who brought this work to fruition. In addition, we must thank our planning officers who worked with the parish to complete the work in order to develop the plan to accord with the statutory requirement. The net result is that this neighbourhood development plan becomes an addendum and integral part of the local plan. I have great pleasure in recommending this to Council. It's not for approval, it's for information. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
The vote. We are voting on this. So is that seconded? Is it seconded? Councillor Davies.
Yes, I'll second and reserve the right.
So now I'm going to open it to comments, and as in the last occasion, I'm going to be the first speaker. So if you'll bear with me. Is it on? Yes. So I will not be voting to make this plan for the following reasons. No development plan is all bad. There are some good things in the plan, but there are some bad things too. We don't get to say yes to the good things and no to the bad things. If we vote to make this plan, then we get it warts and all. And the devil is always in the detail. In this case, the devil is in the interpretation and implementation of the policies, as we are already seeing the damage the plan is doing to our businesses in Home Firth. For this plan has been used at its draft stage to justify the Home Firth Town Centre Access Plan. The evidence for that is in an email to me from the Home Firth Town Centre Access Plan project team dated the 17th of September 2021, which states, one of the scheme's aims is to support the aspirations of the draft Home Valley Neighbourhood Plan. My email, by the way, was a direct question about the impact of the town centre access scheme on shops on the south side of Victoria Street, where those shops are not going to be able to take deliveries in or out. The expectation is that deliveries of heavy items will be carried across 2 lanes of traffic from the other side of the road. The flour company delivering flour to the bakery has said it cannot do that due to the safety of its staff. So we know, we have it in writing, that this delivery ban is justified by the Labour Parish Council's neighbourhood plan. The public, who were asked to vote on the plan, were not told that. They were sent a bland leaflet from the Parish Council that under Policy 7 says supporting economic growth. The truth, however, is that the plan closes shops and puts people out of work. This is a plan that takes no regard of economic growth And once it is made, we can expect to see some more crazy decisions being implemented. Why would anyone in the council chamber vote for a plan that puts people out of work? Those shopkeepers have been coming to this council meeting to plead for their livelihoods, only to be told by the cabinet member that they are exaggerating and that on balance it is a good idea. In my opinion, it is never a good idea to close businesses and put people on the dole. The vast majority of people didn't take part in the referendum. Most people didn't know what it was about, so they didn't bother voting. 81% didn't bother to vote. They didn't know what it was about because the parish council carried out the minimum required consultation during the development phase and involved a tiny number of people. Even some of the parish councillors were locked out of the process. I took part in the early consultations, but the parish council took no notice of what I had to say. At one point, the plan was looking to ban HGVs from Holmfirth with no understanding of the impact that would have on jobs and the local economy, or the alternative routes the HGVs would take through our villages. Fortunately, the planning inspector took that policy out. We were expecting the plan to open up some more greenbelt as well for house building. There are already signs of interest. I think the parish council missed the opportunity to produce a good plan and involve more people. But this was a pet plan produced by a minority for a minority, and we're already witnessing the damage the plan is doing. I can't vote for a plan that damages the ward I have served for nearly 20 years. Thank you. Councillor Lukic. Sorry, it says Councillor Lukic first. I'll bring you back in, Donald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just noted from the report, I believe it said the council is required to make the plan because it's been to a referendum. And though I note the low turnout, I suppose relatively low turnout, 19%, you know, turnout thresholds and things, I think most of us were elected on turnouts of well under 50%, if that, you know, 40%. So I don't know what thresholds might be considered appropriate, but there was a very clear majority of those who voted, 84%. In favour of the plan, and it was up, obviously, in any referendum, it's up to those making their case on either side. So I'd like to see some clarity on, you know, the legal requirements for us to make this plan and the implications of not voting in favour of this report. But from me, it looks like it would be upholding democracy to make the plan. Thank you.
Councillor Firth. Donald Firth.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I come to speak against this document, this Parish Council's document, and the development plan and climate change. And I do hope you've all read the document. Does George Orwell's book on 1984 spring to mind? Because it did to mind when I read the document on the draconian measures they were going to bring in on climate change. Another thought is that most of this draconian situation, they're wanting to go back to everybody growing their own vegetables. Useful in wartime. It was useful in Russia after the revolution for the co-ops to grow their own vegetables. But this plan only refers to the Home Valley. What about the rest of Kirklees? And I might add, it does not include the whole of the Home Valley, it does not include Moultham for some unknown reason. Why? Obviously, the Home Valley is the area of choice for some unknown reason. As a rural economy within the commuting distance of large conurbation of Leeds, Sheffield and Manchester, we have had to keep the businesses going in similar rural areas. But we have a farming on a very small scale on farms just over 50 acres, and they do keep the place going, along with one or two other small businesses. But, unfortunately, the businesses that we had in Holmfirth, Councillor McBride and company have managed to spoil it by simply having their own way and doing what they thought was right, which is totally wrong. We will now probably lose about 5 businesses in Holmfirth. There are very few businesses now as it is. When I read this document, it talks as though we're doing all right. It's lovely. Well, I've been into Holmfirth. I spent 50 years, for goodness sake, working in Holmfirth. So there isn't much about Holmfirth I don't know. And I have got to say, for some unknown reason, they come along and they decide what they're going to do and what they have actually done. They've taken the south side of Kirklees. Kirklees have taken the south side of Victoria Street, which was a drop-off zone for all the shops on the south side. And there was 95% of the drop-offs there was actually on the south side. Less than 19% was on the north side. But for some unknown reason, they changed their mind. And they moved the drop-off zone to the north side and took away the south side, which means the baker's shop and all the rest of the shops up that side cannot and will not be able to receive any goods other than trailing them across a double carriageway, a double road, I should have said, a busy street to get across to the deliveries. Now, the deliveries for the baker is about 120 sacks of flour. And he's asked them if they'd mind awfully delivering it across the road, and they've told him straight no. So what's happened there is he either finds some other way or he closes down. Mr. Christoph has had the Old Bridge Bakery for nearly 30 years. It's one of the best baker shops you can get for miles around. We haven't got a butcher's. In fact, we've got very little in Holmfirth at all. It's dead. And now we've got a situation where Mr. Christophe has received an email from an unknown, well, I know the person, but I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to embarrass people. This person has written to Greg, and it goes like this. Aye, a car parking survey is being carried out next week as part of the Home Valley Parish Council's Climate Action Plan. This aims to help people reduce carbon emissions, and transport contributes 37% of these emissions. The survey will help us better understand when and why people use their cars to travel to Holmfirth. Well, the obvious reason is, if they didn't have a car, the bus service is poor, so they'd have to walk or use a bike. Bit of a daft question to ask people. Drivers will be asked to complete an online survey which takes less than 5 minutes, and your help is needed to ensure we get full coverage. Can you please let me know if you can assist? This is one of the guys that they're getting rid of. It's just unbelievable. Well, it is unbelievable, yeah. Now, I want to go a little bit further on with this job and go to ask the part of why we need to look for things like small businesses, if you like. Can we support small businesses? Yes, we can support small businesses, but for a sustainable local economy, the challenge is to ensure sufficient local jobs and businesses to give the opportunity for residents to work within the locality of the valley. And my answer to that is, then stop building on prime areas that will support local manufacturing businesses and commercial businesses. Then we might be going somewhere. But unfortunately, nobody listens today. They just do what they want. And with respect, Home Firth is dying on its feet. People are going, I know my neighbours, they don't shop in Home Firth anymore. They go to Penistone, they go to Barnes, they go anywhere but Home Firth because that's the only place they can get what they need. The services, the service shops.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. So, well, it looks as though I'm going to have to sign off, but I could go on all day because it annoys me that this, if we come to this, we've got to come down and speak about it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Any more speakers on this? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's obvious that this has split opinion, as always happens in referendums. And I think it's fair to say that when you read the proposed vision at the beginning of this document, that is attractive. But as Councillor Patrick has said, the devil is in the detail. And I know there are strong arguments, and I know that these beliefs from Councillor Patrick and Councillor Firth are sincerely and robustly held, highlighting some of the things that are wrong with the plan. Now, these two members have had Home Firth and its surrounding areas at heart for many, many years. In fact, they've got 50 years of service between them as councillors. And it would be foolish to ignore what they say. Incidentally, I do think it's unfortunate the way that some of the businesses have been treated and talked to about the transport. All that's required is a little flexibility and some imaginative thinking, it seems to me. Councillor Lukic put his finger on the dilemma, which is that although I may disagree with the plan, it is a legislative requirement of this council that the plan is adopted. And therein is the rub, as it has been passed by the referendum. And the answer is, no doubt, it will be passed tonight, but it'll have to be passed without my vote, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a fine old dilemma here, it seems to me. There is the same problem with neighbourhood plans as with the local plan in general. Most people don't think it's real. They only think it's real when a planning application lands near them and they start getting concerned about it. We had a case the other week in Hanging Heaton where that was perfectly obvious that that had happened. The figures tell their own story about the turnout in the referendum, which is a legal requirement for doing this procedure. A lot of local people clearly were either not interested or didn't think it somehow concerned them. I mean, I'm talking in general terms here. I don't live in the Holme Valley, but we've heard two councillors who, as Councillor Hall says, have represented the area collectively for 50 years, and they don't like it. Now, I don't necessarily slavishly follow Councillor Firth and Councillor Patrick, as they will both know. But I think in this instance, what they have to say is quite pertinent. But we're left with a difficulty that it's got to be ratified. the whole thing is unsatisfactory because there is a further issue, it seems to me, and that is that the local plan itself has got quite detailed policies on most things. So it seems to me, and I'm kind of extrapolating my remarks to my own area, that what you can do to tweak that is really, that's all you can do. You can tweak it a bit. You don't get much leeway to actually alter what's there. And it sounded to me from both what Councillor Firth said and Councillor Patrick, that there were some ideas which almost kind of went beyond what the local plan was talking about. So I mean, I don't quite know where we stand on the vote on this. We could have lots of abstentions, perhaps. I don't know. But I clearly, the whole thing is not satisfactory, but in a sense, we're stuck with it. I just thought I would make that point. Probably too long, but apologies.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Paul Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very interesting discussion and debate. When I first became a parish councillor, because as well as being a ward councillor in the Home Valley South, I was also parish councillor, elected previous to that, and still I'm on the parish. One of the first things that really attracted me to the parish council was the fact that they were developing a neighbourhood development plan. It seemed to me it was an initiative which is all about giving the community a voice. So a steering group was established within the parish council well before I was involved. And that steering group certainly was not a select few of people who were locking out anybody. I'll give you some examples of the type of people who are on the steering group. Holmfirth Conservation Society, Honley Civic Society, Home Village Residents Association, and Scholes Futures Group. And the Scholes Futures Group is a residents group that actually fought hard, and I'm sure before I was a councillor you recognise the group, because they fought hard to stop development in schools, and actually through their campaigning were successful as the planning inspector backed them up, and were able to protect some significant parts of green space, which actually that green space they protected is now protected in the neighbourhood development plan. So despite this myth that's being put forward to you, that this was some sort of cabal of a small percentage of particularly extreme individuals, it's far from that. This is actually a fairly widespread community effort in terms of steering group. I remember when I joined the parish council, Rachel Hogley, who needs to be congratulated, who's an independent councillor, who's a fantastic parish councillor, was begging and asking for parish councillors to be involved. Nobody was being locked out. And I think that's a very, to give that, make that allegation is particularly disturbing. I did some work on the steering group. I can't pretend that I did a lot. Nowhere near what others did, but certainly I helped in some of the consultation. And there were three separate times where that consultation happened: 2017, 18, and 19. It was no way was there any attempt just to do the minimum. Every single avenue was approached, whether it was online, whether it was leaflets. Every single household within the Home Valley received a booklet on the plan. So it's true to say that unfortunately we didn't get a lot of people, or as many people as you would have liked involved in that consultation, but no way was it the case that people were excluded. And I think it's important to remember that when you look at the objectives, and I'm not going to go through them now, but certainly the objectives of this plan is nothing to do with closing down business. It's the complete opposite. It's about creating a sustainable environment and a sustainable and vibrant future for the town. And I know Councillor Patrick and Firth have got strong views about the town access plan, and they're entitled to those views. But I think it's fairly spurious to try and link them into this. I'm sure the response they got, I would assume, was, yes, the town access plan certainly it follows the similar principles to the neighbourhood development plan. But the neighbourhood development plan doesn't facilitate it. And to try and make out that somehow this is a Trojan horse that's been used to undermine people's rights. And I know Councillor Firth and Councillor Patrick run a campaign against this, where again they implied that this was the case, that there were houses built in wrong places because of this plan. It really is a real disappointment for me, because this is something whereby the community of Home Firth have contributed, have been active, and in fact active for over 4 or 5 years. These are people who've not been paid, who are not getting any personal sort of reward for doing this. This is an excellent plan, and I look forward to the other plans in Kirklees coming forward from Moorfield and Netherton, and that we see even more coming through in terms of this approach across Kirklees.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Cooper. Councillor Pandor, you're down to speak. Would you like to speak? Yeah, let him speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to take too much time, but I think we've heard all 3 ward councillors, and I think Councillor Paul Davis has actually given us some robust facts in terms of the process and what this plan means. And I know that it's a difficult decision for everybody, but as far as I'm concerned, a referendum took place, and 84% of the votes were in favour of the plan. And that's democracy. You know, a lot of times votes go and they don't go in my favour, but I have to accept that. What we don't want to do is we don't want to undermine democracy at that local level. So my group will be voting for this plan. And I think Peter forgot to mention that under item 6, there are a number of recommendations. I'm sure Peter will mention that when he comes here. But the recommendations are very, very clear, and I'd like to just reinforce the recommendations as set out in the report. So my group will respect democracy, and will make sure that democracy prevails. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There's a vote. There's a vote. There's a vote. Yeah.
I think it would be helpful to clarify, because a few people have raised the issue about what we're required to do legally here. We are required to accept this and make it. There are the first 2 recommendations. One is to note the outcome of the Home Valley Neighbourhood Development Plan referendum, as set out in the summary. The second one is the council formally makes the plan. It's required to do that within 8 weeks of the referendum, and it must do that unless there are certain requirements that might not be met, but the inspector was very clear that the plan met the outcomes required, and you are required as a council to vote on this and agree to make it. There are then 3 recommendations which delegate authority to the Strategic Director for Growth and Regeneration to do certain amendments to it as needed. But that's what you're required to do, to note the outcome of the referendum, to make the plan, which you're required to do because there's no reason not to, and then delegate authority to the Strategic Director in the circumstances set out here. Thank you.
So do you want to go straight to the vote, or do you want a right of reply, Councillor McBride?
Really, we're here to note this and to take the actions which we are required to do by law. Thank you.
The vote is to make the plan and delegate the authority. Yes?
The vote is to agree the recommendations here. One is to note the outcome of the Home Valley Neighbourhood Development Plan referendum, which is outlined in the summary, which you're required to note. You're then legally required to make the Home Valley Neighbourhood Development Plan, as outlined in the appendix. Which is you're required to do by legislation. So that's to comply with the legislative requirements. You have to do that within 8 weeks, and then you are asked to recommend to delegate authority to the Strategic Director of Growth and Regeneration to do 3 things as set out here. So you're asked to do 5 things. I hope that that's clear. I think if you've read the report, you'll know that that's the case. So you're being asked to vote on those 5 things, to note, to make, and then to delegate 3 times. Hopefully that's
So let's
explained.
move to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? Abstentions? That's carried.
I think that's carried.
Carried,
That's
yeah.
carried.
Okay. Item 9, Code of Conduct Model, page 265. Councillor John Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Council adopts the draft hybrid code based on the Local Government Association Model Code as set out in the appendix to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Is that seconded? Moen?
Mr. Mayor, I second it.
Are there any comments or questions? Right of reply, Councillor Taylor? No? Move to vote then. Show of hands, all those in favour? Any against? That's carried, thank you. Item 10 then, page 317, Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report 2020-2021. Councillor Smage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I start by thanking everyone involved in scrutiny under really difficult circumstances during 2020 and 2021. As you'll all appreciate, there have been a number of challenges in respect of meetings, but we have been able to scrutinise a wide range of services for both the council and partners, and there are some highlights in our annual report. I will ask lead members to highlight some of their panel's work, and then I'll come back to conclude the remarks. So can I ask Councillor Uppal to come first, then Councillor Marchington, and then Councillor Cooper. Thank you. And I will return, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for all that you've done as Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee as well. I won't say much, it's basically covered in the report from page 342. I do want to thank all panel members who worked diligently and really hard during the COVID period. It was a difficult time because we had to go to virtual meetings, and I know that didn't suit everybody, but thank you for all that you've done. I also want to particularly mention the work of Jodie, who sat up there. She's been a fantastic governance officer, and I know I've been a bit tricky sometimes, but she's worked really well with us, so thank you, Jodie, for everything that you've done. Obviously, during 2021, 2020 and 2021, we covered, we did a lot around the COVID response from the council. We covered the community response, the economic response, and also looked at the impact on poverty and tackling inequalities. This is a very difficult time for councils, and I do want to mention the great work that our staff did, particularly frontline staff, who at a time when most of us could work from home, they couldn't, and they went out and did some excellent work. So thank you to them. We also worked a lot more closely with the voluntary sector during COVID, and I think there's a lot of learning there for the council and statutory agencies about how we should work more hand in hand with those agencies. And I can see Liz is looking at me, so I'm going to wind up. And it's all in there anyway, so hopefully that's enough. I'm off. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just again to express thanks to everybody who's engaged with the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel this year, the children and families, parents who've got involved, officers, yeah, brilliant support from our scrutiny support officers, Helen, Nicola, I think Lee, deputised, and Sheila's been involved with that, and also to panel members. It has been a difficult year for everybody, but actually there's been some really good work continued. And actually, it's after the year. I mean, what we've really appreciated is actually getting back to face-to-face visits with frontline staff and actually seeing the improvement journey, which is clearly being travelled along as we go out and meet people. It was a real pleasure to meet one of the children's frontline social work teams and actually hear their enthusiasm for protecting and safeguarding children and young people who are doing that. We had a brilliant example of how they use children's voice to make sure that they get the best decisions and outcomes for children and young people. And it wasn't just a tick box exercise, it was a really clear example of that. We've seen some brilliant examples of partnership working. As we did there, we've got people from other services placed in children's social services and providing their advice and the advice from children's social about them. So from the police service, the health service, and that was really good to see. One of our priorities was about looking at how the Children and Young People Service use data, how they collect it, and how that's used that to. For those of you involved, the infamous word liquid logic, which is the current system. It's taken forever to get in, but Tableau. And actually what we saw was really robust, on a weekly basis, professionals putting their judgments on the line to be scrutinised by their peers, their fellow social workers, but also by other partners from the health service and the police. And that was really robust. It was brilliant to see that both in the collection of data and how that's used on a daily basis and a weekly basis. That was fantastic to see. I want to also express my thanks to the new members of the panel who've come in with quite a few new members and the questions they've asked. One of the concerns that's been raised is about the number of children who are looked after in Kirklees is relatively low compared to our statistical peers. And there was some really good questions. Well, why is that? Why is that? And it's continuing, particularly when we've seen the appalling murder of young Arthur Labingo Hughes, and some of the questions have been raised there. And actually, you cannot say this is never going to happen again, but some of the concerns that other people have raised about best practice is happening in Kirklees. And it's not just the resourcing that's in there for early intervention and prevention, but the way Kirklees does things slightly differently, not just from in West Yorkshire, things like special guardianship orders. So Kirklees spends a lot of effort making sure that children and young people, where possible, are placed with family members under these orders, and that's one of the reasons why we have fewer children categorised as children looked after. But the questions that panel members raised, we found that out, but also actually, is there some best practice we can be sharing with people throughout? The last thing, and it's a compliment for you as a full council about you being corporate parents. I remember Jim Dodds years ago saying, oh, you're all telling us we're all corporate parents. But the corporate parenting board, chaired by Councillor Viv Kendrick, is doing its job really effectively. So you've got councillors there, you've got partners there, we've got representatives from the Kirklees Fostering Network. We've now actually got a young person who was a care leaver, is now a member of that board. And it's one of those things where, careful about that. You know, Ofsted recognise that we as a council have a really good understanding of what it means to be a corporate parent. And that duty is exercised on our behalf by the Corporate Parenting Board. And there is scrutiny going on by that and panel members, and that's really appreciated. So this is some of the highlights of the ongoing work of the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Panel. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the members of the Corporate Scrutiny Panel for all the work they've put in and the officers who've supported us during that time. I think it's been a really interesting time. We've been looking at the way that the finances of the council are being dealt with, and I must say Eamon Croston has given us, I think, quite a lot of confidence that has got a very strong handle on the finances of the council, and I think he's always stepped up when asked what some people have thought are tricky questions, but he's handled them very well. We've had in terms of the council plan, we had a lot to say in the Corporate Scrutiny Panel about the council plan. We made detailed suggestions forward to it. I think we can see where the impact of the Corporate Scrutiny Panel actually had effect. I think one of the most interesting and I thought enjoyable sections of the Corporate Scrutiny Panel's work was the technology strategy. And you really got a real feeling of how the council had adapted during the crisis that we faced and pulled out the stops to enable us to carry on functioning, not just as councillors but officers as well. And the insight we got into that, I think, was it'd probably make a great film or novel or something. It was such an interesting story about how they went about things. Going forward, I really want us to look at seeing how officers are looking at opportunities going forward, how we're actually looking at not just the risks that the council faces, but the opportunities that we can take. We want to know that the service directors, the execs, are keyed into the things which are out there, which the council can take advantage of, and to have the confidence that we have the capacity to actually take advantage of those to take the council forward. So I've enjoyed it, and let's look forward to the next coming year.
Thank you. Councillor Zaman couldn't be here today, but she's given me her comments to read out. Okay. So she says, I would have liked to have been present myself to give the members the highlights of last year's Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Panel. Unfortunately, I'm having to isolate. 2020 turned out to be a year like no other. The global pandemic has impacted on everyone, and our thoughts are with those who have lost loved ones due to COVID-19. The Adult Health and Social Care Panel has been crucial in scrutinising and ensuring how services are delivered to our communities. We received regular updates from the Director of Public Health regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, including details of which localities had high infection levels, availability of COVID-19 testing in the area, and proposed locations for testing sites. We scrutinised the clarity of messages that were being disseminated to the people of Kirklees regarding keeping safe from COVID-19 and social distancing, and considered how these messages could reach people of all areas. The panel set their work programme for the year highlighting priority services we felt needed to scrutiny. This included organisations like Health Watch Kirklees, Community Care Services, Kirklees Care Homes, Child Development Services, to name a few. The panel have worked hard ensuring it scrutinised the services delivered by stakeholders and its partners. I would like to thank everyone who has been involved in supporting and assisting the scrutiny process in this difficult year: members, officers, partners, co-opted members and the governance team themselves. That's Councillor Zaman's input into the report from scrutiny today. So if I could just return to briefly on the joint committees that are listed. The West Yorkshire Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny work is given in the report. With the development of the Integrated Care Board for West Yorkshire, it is going to be more important than ever that we move forward with health and social care scrutiny both at Kirklees and at a strategic level at West Yorkshire. Wherever scrutiny work happens at either West Yorkshire level and at a council level, it is important that nothing falls between the two scrutiny arrangements, especially in health and social care. On the Calderdale and Kirklees Joint Health Committee, I would just like to update on where we are at the moment. Scrutiny are asking to see actual business cases at this moment in time, one for the new build at HRI and one for the whole of the reconfiguration. It is really important that scrutiny can see all the information, respecting commercial confidentiality, of course. Returning to the annual report, it is not only important to look back on the year, but also to look forwards. Building on the year's positive impacts, I would like to see an increased scrutiny involvement in policies, strategies and projects as they develop. I am, of course, going to mention pre-decision scrutiny, which is something which I think can be very helpful for members, officers and for cabinet members as well. And it provides an opportunity for scrutiny to have an input at an early stage. A level of trust is needed for this work so that scrutiny can be that critical friend. It is important that upcoming priority areas within cabinet portfolios continue to be shared with scrutiny to encourage early involvement in any developing areas. I would like to commend scrutiny to all the councillors. You would expect me to, I suppose, but being on scrutiny can help councillors to give them an opportunity to fully understand different areas of both the council and the health partners' work. So my thanks, finally, to all the lead members, to all the councillors involved in scrutiny, voluntary cooptees and governance officers for their hard work and commitment during the year. I'm also grateful to the local groups, organisations and individuals who have attended virtual meetings, made presentations and provided evidence, and to council officers and cabinet members for their attendance and contributions. And Councillor Paul, I can be a bit tricky as well. For clarity, Mr Mayor, the recommendation is that Council receive and note the scrutiny annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Do you want to stay there? Just in case. Let's just see if there are any comments or questions. Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I really just want to make a statement about if the other scrutiny panels have worked as hard as the children's scrutiny panels, then you're going at some rate. And the question about predetermination of issues, I'm very, very keen. I think children's scrutiny comes on the same journey, our ambition to be outstanding as children's services. And I find the work of the Children's Scrutiny Panel absolutely essential. It triangulates what I think I know. It asks questions often that I've not thought of asking. And sometimes it leads to some more in-depth reflection by the service and clarification of issues. So, you know, if all scrutiny is doing that, then we're in a really good state in Kirklees. And I would say to people, if you are offered a place on corporate parenting board, snap it up. If you're offered a place on children's scrutiny panel, for goodness sake, snap it up, because we would absolutely welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for presenting your report, Liz, and to the other panel lead members. I would like to say a particular thank you to the co-opted members who do an awful lot of work for the panels, are always very well informed, and I know from my own past experience chairing these panels, makes such a difference to what's been discussed and to the outcomes of the debate. So thank you particularly to them. Scrutiny is important. It is important. And I think as members and as senior members, we shouldn't in any way deflect from saying that. It should be said more often. It's a very important part of this council. If we think where it came from, it was set up probably, I would think, 20 years ago now, as part of the move to a cabinet system. It's that safety net that when we moved away from a committee system, there has to be someone who is there scrutinising and taking the overview. And that bit overview is also important. We tend to say, oh, it's scrutiny. It's also overview because we have busy cabinet members, we have busy lead members in this authority. And we also need people who can actually step back a little and take the overview because these people are busy, and it's very important in that regard. Now, I know that Liz and her team and the lead members are doing what they can to improve both the visibility and the impact of overdue and scrutiny in Kirklees, and we must support them in that. And it seems to me that probably there is an agreement emerging that pre-decision scrutiny must be boosted, and I would certainly go along with that. I think that is very important for us. It's important that members feel able to contribute to decisions that are being taken without treading on the toes of Cabinet, who are elected to take the decisions. But if members don't feel that they're in any way involved before, that leads to some of the things that we've been seeing recently where members complain that maybe, oh, I didn't know about this, I haven't been involved, I haven't been consulted or briefed on things that are happening. And I think that could be a very, very powerful tool in ensuring that members do feel involved. The other thing to just pick up on is what you said, Liz, about scrutiny across other places. There's an awful lot of members in here who are involved, not just with scrutiny in this particular borough, but also at the West Yorkshire Combined Authority and the various health panels, which I know Liz goes to. There's an awful lot of work there that goes into that. So let's just reiterate that scrutiny is important, please. And thank you, everybody that has done your part this year for everything that's been taken place and been decided at scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Taylor. John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Liz, and the other members for the report. Dave and I didn't plan this, but I've come up to speak on exactly the same point that David spoke on, and that is about greater involvement of scrutiny and pre-scrutiny. And I've used it before, and I'll use it again, the example of the waste strategy, where that was a really good example of how we all work together to end up with something that everybody could be, we may well have our views about, is this good enough, but we could be largely comfortable about. And it's an exemplar for the council, and I would encourage officers listening and cabinet members listening to think about anything that they're bringing forward, to do that in the same way and to use scrutiny. It is a role that it can play. I think it does lead to better decisions. It does ask those questions, as Viv quite rightly said, that you perhaps hadn't thought of yourselves, and will be strongly supportive of that. So just echoing really, I guess, what David has said, and I certainly think there's a number of members around here that have similar feelings. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Is this not to do with this subject, Councillor Cooper? Well, it's only this is only to note. Do you have a seconder on that? Is that supported? All those in favour? All those against? I think that's lost. Sorry about that. Where were we now? Councillor Pandor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's only right that we give due respect to Councillor Lismage for all the hard work she's been doing across the many years, and especially this year on the back of the pandemic, and also to Councillors Uppal, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Marchington, and Councillor Zaman, who's not here tonight because she's isolating. Many of you will know that we are an exemplar authority for scrutiny, and we've been doing this for many, many years. We are well regarded in terms of our scrutiny functions, and I think it's only right and proper that we actually acknowledge the hard work that Liz puts in with the team. And also to our staff, Jodie's been mentioned, but there's a whole team of officers who actually support that back office function. That corporate function is so important to make sure that we actually get the best decision making that we can get. It adds value, it enriches the decision making, and Cabinet also is better for the input that the scrutiny committees and the work that Liz does with her role as leading on all that. Pre-decision is something that is we need to actually look at and beef up, because that is one way to actually make sure that we get more members involved. And there are opportunities, I completely agree with what Andrew was saying, but the heartbeat of this organisation, I think, is not just the structures, but it's the councillors. And this is something where the councillors actually have got a real say, and we can actually make sure that we actually beef the whole scrutiny process up, and I welcome all the hard work you've done, Liz, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Councillor Warner.
Thanks. This is very brief, and I've already raised this with Health and Social Scrutiny, which I'm part of. Given the times that we're living in, scrutiny has never been more important. Health and social care worries me immensely about what is happening nationally, locally, changes that are happening under the door. And the thing I raised at our meeting yesterday, and that I just want to put it out to all councillors, I think it's really important that all the public know when these scrutiny meetings are, so that they can come and ask questions and make deputations. I'm on Health and Social Scrutiny. We've had one person, and that was a councillor, come and ask a question. And we know how many people can't get access to doctors, etc. But if the public don't feel they have at least a right to go and express concern. So I would just ask councillors to use their social media and whatever, when there is scrutiny, to let people know it's on and that they can go and ask questions. Because just saying it's on the website does not reach many people, in my view. And finally, any chance that next time we could check the heating in the room?
Nothing wrong with the heating. Keeps you all awake. Right to reply, Councillor Smage.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Matt. I'll keep this really brief. I'll try anyway. Thank you, Councillor Kendrick, for your comments. I think you meant pre-decision, not predetermination, but thank you for your comments. Councillor Hall, thank you for your comments, especially on the co-opted members. We've had some co-opted members now on some of the panels for longer than they would normally be, just because of circumstances. And we're currently running a recruitment, I think the closing date is Friday, for some more co-opted members to become involved in scrutiny. The overview is really important as well as scrutiny. It is, both parts of it is. And as I've said, pre-decision scrutiny and that overview as well is really important. It gives scrutiny and input at an early stage. And I think it's a really valuable tool that we have. The importance of public questions as well. Councillor Warner mentioned the importance of public questions. it is important that people come to scrutiny. I have previously discussed, scrutiny does have a Twitter account, and I've previously discussed the use of that Twitter account. Okay. Councillor Taylor, thank you for your comments on the waste strategy. Lead members and myself have early discussions as to items coming to scrutiny at the right time, and there is a lot of work pre-panel meeting in order to ensure that that happens. Councillor Pando, thank you for your comments as well. It is important that scrutiny can adapt and change to the adapting West Yorkshire Kirklees decision making processes, and also that Kirklees works across Calderdale, with Calderdale and Wakefield, because we have many services, especially in health and social care, which are shared across places. It's not just in one place. And we've been doing that for a long time now in Kirklees because of our structure of our health and social care services. And I think it's important that we build on that moving forward. Yes, there are changes in decision making, and as I've said, it's really important because there health and social care, there is a legislative accountability for the council in that area, and it's really important that we don't let anything slip through the cracks, as I've said. But thank you all for your support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smage, and I'd like to add my own sincere thanks to Councillor Smage and all the scrutiny panel members. I know it's a difficult job, but a very important job, having spent quite a few years doing it myself. The report here is for information and to note. We now move on to item 11. Sorry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just due to the limited time, I've got a written question myself, but I recognise the motions have already carried over from the previous meeting. So I'd like to propose that the written questions receive written responses and we move to agenda item 13 if the council agrees.
Is that seconded? No? All right, thank you, Councillor Lukage. Right, item 11 then. Written questions to the leader, cabinet members, chairs of committees and nominated spokesperson. Quite by chance, it's 30 minutes in total on this item, which will take us right through to the end. A maximum of 3 minutes is allowed for putting the question, maximum of 5 minutes to respond, and we will time you. And likewise for any supplementary questions. So, a written schedule of submitted questions has been circulated, which I've nearly lost under all my paperwork. I will now invite members to ask their questions in turn. The appropriate member will respond. One supplementary question to each submitted question is permitted. First one. Question by Councillor Munro to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Democracy, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the Council doing about tackling the backlog of repairs to Council-owned homes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Munro. So during the COVID lockdown, responsive repairs and orders were only available for emergency work. Several non-emergency orders had to be cancelled, and this was due to the lockdown. But this was done in consultation with the tenants. But these have all been reordered once working practices were opened back up again, so there was no lockdown. And we followed this with government guidelines. So in answer to your question, the backlog is being managed down. We are doing this by redirecting resources, recruitment of new tradespeople, and the use of some subcontractors. But can I just say, throughout this pandemic, as it still goes on, and during the lockdown, the gas servicing continued, the electrical testing continued, empty homes and adaptations were done on the voids. and they continued throughout this period. So just an acknowledgement to all the staff out there. Thank you for carrying that on.
Supplementary.
New trade contractors.
That question was asked before. Trade contractors are being recruited because naturally people have retired, they've moved on to a pastures new. So it's just, we're filling that void, and it's like every council, people have retired. So that's the answer, basically.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Councillor Scott. Second question by Councillor Munro to the Cabinet Member for Learning, Aspiration and Communities, Councillor Pattison.
Okay, why was Almondbury Community School formally closed before the new build at King James's was completed?
Almondbury Community School was not closed. It's a simple answer. It was changed from an all-through school, primary and secondary, and the primary school is now being converted into an academy. And in July 2019, what the council cabinet agreed was to change the age range of Almondbury Community School from age 3 to 16 to ages 3 to 11 from the 1st of September last year. The cabinet took decisive action to change the age range of the school before the Department of Education could instruct the closure of the whole school following an Ofsted judgment of special measures. This was a challenging set of circumstances where there was a school with a significant number of spare places, making it incredibly difficult to offer a broad, sustainable curriculum and maintain financial viability. The primary phase of Almondbury Community School was required by the DfE to convert to become an academy, and it's now Hillview Academy, and this continues to serve the local community. This is a matter of public record in the Cabinet report of nearly 2.5 years ago now. The building works required at King James's became clear when the final figures of pupils expected to transfer from Almondbury Community School to King James's were known, though obviously plans had been made in readiness for that transfer. But it was not before the summer of 2019 when the council finally made the decision, read the age range and the numbers that would be transferring. This was a complex legal matter which included the change of admission numbers into all the schools locally and the admission areas. There was a PPP contract involved and obviously employment matters as staff transferred from one school to another. So as I've said before, I have to commend all the schools involved in this, as well as the education service staff, for dealing with this complex issue in a timely and cost-effective manner, which maintained children at the heart of the decision-making, making sure that the outcome was the best possible outcome one for them. Thank you.
Supplementary.
As you're aware, parents have written to me and yourself wanting answers to their questions, because they feel quite aggrieved that their children are having to remain on the former Almondbury Community School site. So will you meet with those parents as they have requested?
The parents' questions will be answered in a meeting.
Thank you. Will I be invited to that meeting? Because they have asked for me to
You only
actually
get one
be there.
supplementary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
You can ask her that outside the... Question 3, question by Councillor Sheard to the Cabinet Member for Children, Councillor Kendrick.
On the run-up to Christmas, I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member how the Cabinet plans to support Kirklees' youth homeless population. So come the 25th of December, they are warm, safe and well fed and are given the appropriate support to help them get back on their feet and making a success themselves.
Before I go into answering your question, I'm just a little concerned by your reference to Kirklees Youth Homelessness population. Because if you are aware of individuals or a group of young people who are homeless, then, you know, it is important that they are referred in to get provision. And I will ensure that an email is sent out to every councillor very shortly, so that if you come across somebody, you know what to do about it, rather than just ringing me. So, in answer to your question, there's a really strong partnership between housing and children's services. It's fairly long established, and it works, first of all, about early intervention and prevention of youth homelessness as a starter. If any young person is threatened with homelessness, they are supported to return home if it's safe to do so. If they cannot return home, Housing Solutions provides not just the statutory homelessness assessments and advice, but also provides support from the Young People's Support Team. This team addresses a whole range of issues, not just about housing, but things like health, employment, benefits, well-being, and so on. And you know, young people are provided for as such. I have to say, homelessness issues for me aren't just for Christmas.
Supplementary?
No, I don't, but I agree that it's not just about Christmas and it's a year-wide issue, but any support to homeless people is much needed.
If you wanted to know what provision there was, but there is provision for young people.
I'll get that in an email if that's okay.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Question 4, question by Councillor Munro. Munro? That's not right. It must be Councillor Watson. It says Councillor Munro Watson on my... Is it you? It's Councillor Munro, to the Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please, can you tell me when the next review of grit bins will take place?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Munro. Our winter maintenance service was last agreed in 2018 and is now approaching 4 years, and we will be reviewing next year. The review will not only consider grit bins, grit bin numbers and deployment, but also explore how we can work with our communities to build on our current volunteer scheme.
Supplementary.
Thank you. So will you agree with me that there is currently a shortage of grit bins across Almonbury Ward, for example?
No, I won't agree with you, but can I just give you my reasons? As you state that there are currently 1,450 grit bins on the highway network, which is considerably more grit bins than those provided by our West Yorkshire councils, and is comparable with Leeds City Council, who has 1,100 grit bins, which has a much larger highway network. Calderdale has around 600 grit bins, smaller road network. Derbyshire County Council has around 800 grit bins, a much larger road network. But each year, the highway service must commit a significant level of resource to check, repair, replace, and refill each of the 1,450 bins up to 3 times each year. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to question 5, Councillor Cooper. To the Cabinet Member for Regeneration, Councillor McBride.
Will the Council consider its decision to revoke the commitment to include a rugby league museum in the George Hotel?
Thank you. The Council is seeking every means of properly locating the Rugby League Museum in the cultural heart of the town centre. If it's not possible to locate the museum in the George, which seems to be the case at the moment from what I'm told, Commitments given to the Rugby League were given in good faith, but the extension and very expensive work on the George suggests that relocation of the museum and rebuilding of the hotel may not be compatible objectives. If that not be so, our priority has to be the reopening of a hotel. A relocation in the cultural heart of the massive investment we are making in the town centre would be most fitting, if not the perfect location from a rugby league perspective. And I do understand any suggestions that we might have done it to locate the rugby league in with the hotel. We honestly made a commitment to talk and presumed we could do that. It would appear, from the evidence I've given now, that that may not be possible. The two objectives cannot be met together.
The museum...
Supplementary? Is this a supplementary?
Yeah, the museum and the funding that's been secured has been secured on the back of having a rugby league museum in the George Hotel. And do you recall saying, since we announced we wanted to bring a National Rugby League Museum to the George Hotel, we received a huge amount of support from across the world. It's the birthplace of the support, and it's important that we cherish that. Huddersfield and Rugby League have a very special bond, and we know that Rugby League fans from around the world will be delighted by the prospect of visiting this museum. What's changed, Councillor McBride? What happened to the special bond? Why is it no longer important that we cherish the fact that the George Hotel is the birthplace of Rugby League?
Fully aware of our commitment, I am fully aware of the significance of the George and its relationship to the Rugby League. And it was our honest endeavour to relocate in there. As events turned out, or as information now turns out, the two objectives are not compatible. Now, the primary objective of us buying the George in the first place was to provide a first-class hotel. And if it comes to a choice of priorities, and it may well, and it seems so, then the priority of the hotel must take precedence. So it's with great, or I think, great sorrow that we can't necessarily locate the two things together. So it gives me no pleasure to say we may not be able to achieve that objective.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Question 6 by Councillor Cooper to Culture and Green at Kirklees, Councillor Simpson.
Okay. So, at the last full council meeting, you defended the air quality and carbon emissions impact resulting from the council's A629 widening proposals. Your assertions conflict with the evidence provided as part of the council's submission to the A629 widening planning application. Please can you provide written calculations and detail the assumptions you made to justify your comments at the last full council meeting?
Thank you very much, Councillor Cooper, for your question. I must admit that I don't recognise your reflections on my comments at the last full council. What I did was provide an explanation of elements of it in response to questions and what have sometimes been misunderstandings about what's being proposed. And I spoke at length in response to a number of issues, as I often find myself doing on this issue at these meetings, much to Mr Mayor's upset. So it would have been slightly helpful for me if you could have clarified exactly what assertions you felt conflicted. But broadly, my response and the information submitted in the planning application with regard to air quality derived from the air quality impact assessment and analysis with regards to the carbon sequestration of new trees compared to existing trees. The assessments I referenced at the last meeting do show a positive overall contribution to air quality by reducing the volumes of stationary traffic. This sits alongside actions in our 5-year air quality action plan, which contains measures to improve air quality in other specific locations and sees major investment in electric vehicle charge points, a school engagement programme, and work to promote modal shift, including walking, cycling and public transport. Assessments also show that it would take around 3.5 years, as Councillor McBride said previously, for the new trees planned as part of the A629 scheme to offset that carbon that would otherwise be soaked up by the existing trees, and from that point forward, the new trees would have a net positive effect of around 2,500 tonnes. I recognise that this is an important and complex area, and it's difficult to provide through a verbal response to the complex questions about modelling and so on. So I propose to provide you with a full written response, setting out assumptions and comparisons of the models used. In the meantime, I want to stress that we are currently in a live planning application process and still developing a full business case on the project. We're constantly trying to learn from the increasing levels of information to develop the best possible scheme that meets the Council's priorities across climate, inclusion, economy and active travel, and that work continues.
Thank you. I know that...
Supplementary.
Supplementary. Thank you, and we look forward to looking at your written response. Not just me, but campaigners will be looking to see how your written response and the evidence with it comply. So my supplementary is, did you notice, Councillor Simpson, that in asking my question, I did not accuse you of making up your own facts? Something you accused me of, when all I did was quote the professional opinion of the Council's tree officer, the analysis of your carbon impact assessments with the A629 planning application, carried out by Kirklees Climate Commission, and the views of the highly respected Woodland Trust on the A629 proposals. Do you want to reconsider your assertion that I was making up my own facts, or alternatively detail where I was doing such a thing?
I'm sorry if that I'm sorry if those comments upset you, Andrew. But I think in responding, as I did, and I didn't intend for you to not be in the room. I would have said it to your face, and I'll say it now, that what I said in response to your comments was an attempt to correct what I believe are, in some cases, misunderstanding, because it's a complex matter with a lot of information. And of course, there is a political campaign behind it as well that's going on. And I don't think it's unreasonable to highlight that there is always politics involved in such things. Politics involved in such things.
Councillor Cooper, Councillor, you've had your supplementary.
Yeah,
thank you very much, councillors, for that. Question 7. Question by Councillor Lawson to the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Paul Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. What income is estimated to be lost to businesses in Cleckheaton during the recent series of water mains bursts on Bradford Road and the surrounding area?
Thanks for raising this issue, Councillor Lawson. Very important issue. I think you're probably aware that due to legislation, this is very much something that sits with the Yorkshire Water. It's not something that we as a council are liable in terms of payments and any claimed loss of income. So this isn't something that we actively work on as such, but that doesn't mean this is not an important matter, particularly for these businesses. Also where we have a statutory duty to allow access to the highway to enable utility companies to repair and maintain their apparatus. But from there on, it really is an issue between the utility company and any third parties, if that third party believes that the activities of the utility company have damaged the business. However, saying that, certainly as a council, we will provide as much support as possible to enable those businesses to communicate with Yorkshire Water. That Yorkshire Water has a customer charter. It does detail the compensation packages, and I'm very confident we have the right people to give the right advice and support to businesses when they need that.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mayor. So, yes, it did have a high impact on the businesses in the centre of around Bradford Road in Cleckheaton. These bursts are increasing in frequency. It is obvious that the infrastructure is old, possibly Victorian. When we see the 12-inch bores coming out of certain sites in Oakenshaw, then we know that these are cast iron sites and they are pure rust when we see them come out. I and my ward colleagues have arranged a meeting with Yorkshire Water to actually ask about the infrastructure and the investment that they might make. As a lowly ward colleague, though, I don't think that I have the clout to bring Yorkshire Water to the table and discuss that in any great detail. So my question is, what have you been doing, or what will you do, to bring Yorkshire Water to the table and to make sure that they invest properly in the infrastructure of towns like Cleckheaton?
Well, first of all, be very happy, John, to talk about this afterwards, and if needs be, come along with yourself and get officers to support that, because I think that initiative for you makes absolute sense. We do have an issue nationally, as again, I'm sure people are aware, and there's been some recent investigations by Guardianship University, which are very interesting, where the private water companies have taken on, since their privatisation, some 51 billion in borrowing, and actually paid out 56 billion in dividends. When they were privatised, they were actually debt-free. The government privatised them debt-free. So I think we can start to work out where the companies are borrowing money. It's not borrowing money to do, as you say, invest in infrastructure and provide better service. It's borrowing money to pay dividends out to their shareholders as such. So there is a national issue, which I think we should all be lobbying on. But locally, certainly be very happy to work with you, and we can take this offline if after and see, as you say, what clout we can add to what you were doing to try and help with the issues that you're facing in the ward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davies. Can I ask the Cabinet Member for Heating Civic Buildings to put some more coins in the meter? It's now got cold up here. Cold air drops, doesn't it? Warm air rises. Moving on. Question by Councillor Lawson to the Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Mather.
Thank you. What alternative parking arrangements are being made in Huddersfield ahead of the delivery of the Cultural Heart?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Lawson. And the Council is committed to delivering the town centre that is modern, competitive, and the Cultural Heart is the centrepiece. We are fully aware that this may mean disruption in the short term. Our town centre will be changing rapidly, and several of our major projects will inevitably mean that some of the existing parking arrangements will be unavailable for periods of time due to construction. This will impact on how our residents and businesses visit and use our town centre. So prior to lockdown, the Council carried out surveys of all car parks in Huddersfield to understand usage and capacity. We know that providing a supply of reasonably priced, attractive and safe car parks within walkway distance of our town centre attractions is one of the ingredients for keeping the town centre vibrant. Officers are currently working to ensure that residents, existing businesses and visitors are not disadvantaged during the disruption as much as possible. We will be making sure that those existing car parks that are underused are better publicised and better signposted to ensure that they are used to their maximum, as well as clearly communicating in advance of how the changes will impact on people and vehicles getting into and around our town.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Matt. It's that word disadvantage that sort of the supplementary is powered by. I've been approached by the chair of Huddersfield Theatre Users Association, who has stated that the demograph of the Lawrence Batley Theatre has a high incidence of those with mobility issues, and the parking is not adequate, and they have seen a drop-off of the use of the theatre by that demograph. I understand that by the short term, in the delivery of the Cultural Heart, we mean 4 or 5 years, something around there. How are you going to ensure that our jewels in the crown, such as Lawrence Batley Theatre, are not sort of worn away over the next 4 years by a fall in footfall and people just wanting to go elsewhere where they can get from the car or get from the bus to the theatre.
Lawson, I have been in communication with Mr. Payne. I have given him quite detailed information regarding the disruption that this development may cause. And whilst the project is taking place, we will actually try and replace the lost, we can't replace the lost car parking facilities entirely. And this is mainly because alternative suitable locations are not readily available. And this is also ensuring that we're working with partners and private providers. But what we will do is we're speaking to other car park providers within the town centre where there is an opportunity to increase parking supply at different times of the day, for example, to feed the nighttime economy, to make sure that maximum numbers of spaces are available for use in the town at any other time. And I did say to Mr. Payne that we have a small town centre. Of course, we want it to remain resilient, and there is plenty of parking spaces in the locality, which isn't too far. And I know for a fact that there are disabled drop-off points and parking spaces near there. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I do not intend to take the next question. It's so close to the end of the meeting now, and so I'm going to finish the meeting. I would just like to say to everyone, it is our last meeting before Christmas, and it does seem a bit early to wish you all a happy Christmas, you and your families, a safe and happy Christmas, and the same message to all our staff. Thank you very much.